from a rating perspective, there's I'm gonna make up a number. There's like 8 actual good nodes, probably like 8 to 10 on this tree that you actually want, and you have to just swim through piss to get it all. Is the way I'd put it.
Yes, I think that's accurate description of the general tree.
I'm just going to call it and hopefully everyone's there. All right, the Mage talent trees, the protagonists of WoW. I'll have you guys introduce yourself probably once he gets in, and we'll talk about the order of things, the way I think it makes the most sense. I don't know if you guys have watched me do any of these for other classes, but the idea is the main focus at the beginning is just on the class tree. We'll talk about how it is filled out for both Fire, Frost, and Arcane, and just talk about the decisions. Very important when you guys are filling it out. I might choose one of you to like fill out something for a certain spec, and then other people can certainly comment on the decisions along the way. That's encouraged. Even if you want to take much more than 8 points at the beginning, for example, for whatever reason, always just do 8 and move on and focus on the things that are more important first. What this does is it helps me like focus in on what the decisions are and where, and it can really point out when a lot of things are really badly pathed and really bad decisions you have to make. Now, looking at the Mage tree the other day, it looks like it has a decent bit of problems, but we'll talk about that in a second. All right, so I have Preheat Norrinir and Fired here with me, so if you guys would like to introduce yourselves, and Preheat, go first.
Sure. Hello, I'm Preheat. I'm the Wowhead guy writer for Fire and Frost Mage, and yeah, here to talk about Mage and mainly just advocate for a lot of the things that I see as problems with it.
Cool. Norrinir, what about you?
All right, I'm a Mage theorycrafter. I've been theorycrafting for the past 7 years. I'm also working as a SimC developer, and I'm here to talk about, well, primarily Frost, but I'll try to give my feedback on Fire and Arcane too.
Cool, awesome. And Fired Up.
Hello. I'm fired up. I raid in Liquid. Most of you guys probably know me from being the 6 times world record holder in BFA for horrific visions, and I also have
You have dog?
dogs.
Oh, you have dogs. Okay, not singular dogs. Excellent. Yeah, I do think that's actually where most people know you from. That is pretty sick. I remember that. All right, so as far as talking about each class, the easiest thing for me is to have one person focus on going down the tree for a specific spec of the class, both in the class tree and then when we separately talk about the spec trees. This being a triple DPS class where all of you are well versed in all of them, we will have all of you here for all 3 spec discussions. However, I'll usually have one of you take me down the tree. So I think Norrinir will do Frost because, yeah, it sounds like you're a big Frost guy. You have a Frost icon on Discord, so that's just like a slam dunk. However, I'm Fired Up and Preheat both have names that are both heavily like Fire Mage based. So which one of you is more passionate about Arcane that wants to be the like primary person to take us to, or which one of you guys wants to talk about Arcane basically?
I will certainly talk about Arcane if Fired Up doesn't want to, and don't mind also talking about Fire a little bit as well. So
yeah, it's not necessarily talking. You guys are all gonna be talking about everything. It's just like I'm gonna have you while sharing my screen, which I'll do now, like run me down a build and have me build it out, and we're gonna like kind of fill it out together, and you're going to be telling me what to select, and then talking and then kind of starting the conversation and the decision making with me, and then everyone is free to comment on anything at all times. That's kind of the idea. It's just to like kind of split it up a little bit. Before we even start filling out the general trees, give me a little bit of how you guys feel about your general tree compared to others. You can talk about good things, bad things, and then just kind of roll with the conversation. This usually lasts like a good 10 or 15 minutes. I just want to hear what you guys think about it.
All right, do you mind if I start?
Yeah, you guys can all speak freely. It's very informal.
So I think my main... Well, let's start with the good stuff. There's a lot of talents that I honestly didn't expect they would put into the general tree, like giving all mages access to greater invisibility was a fairly big surprise to me. I like there's a lot of talents that you usually didn't pick because they competed with other better talents. For example, in the fire tree you had Blast Wave, which is a fairly useful utility in some situations, but most of the time you had to use the mobility option. Yeah. So now you can have Blast Wave and still pick like Shimmer, cool. Which is a nice thing. But I think that's like where the good stuff kind of ends.
Yeah. Okay. Just to kind of before going off of each individual thing, because I think some are more significant than that. Frost Mage is a class that while having access to 2 immunities in a short amount of time with the charge system, not the charge system, Cold Snap, sorry, they were still one of the weakest classes in the game. They were absolutely... From me seeing every person in my guild play alts of every class and spec in the game, Frost Mage is top 3 probably in alt farm deaths. It's just a class where it's all proactive and it's only an immunity and their shield's pretty weak. and they, you know, they're just a class that is struggling in PvE, certainly defensively. I think Frost Mages having the ability to get greater invis is significant. I think that makes them a much more viable raid spec. Like I'm not kidding. Like during this expansion, we got to the point where we were just like, alt Frost Mages are just like, just play fire. Like you have 2 cheat deaths, you know, it's just like you're more mobile in general. Just play fire. Like even if Frost is better, this definitely changes that. It is proactive. You know, it's not as good as something like Cauterize, but it's still just a massive cooldown. And even for fire as well. Like think about the rich get richer. The fact that fire mages are going to have Cauterize, alter time, and greater invis. Okay, we'll talk about how weird the tree is in a second, to where some stuff you might exclude, but you know, they are just actually unkillable class. Yeah, I think all of that is so far pretty great. I think the main issue that you guys are going to want to talk about is the pathing of this tree and the placement, correct?
I mean, it's...
Yeah.
My main issue is probably with just the low amount of points and the huge amount of like 2-pointers and 3-pointers. And most of those, even though some of those 3-pointers are like stuff I don't really want to pick, like if I take a look at it, and you take a look at sometime, for example, Tempest Barrier, I'm never picking that, because if I want to unlock something, I'm better off just picking Blast Wave or going through Rune of Power, which I have to take anyways. There's just a lot of talents that you have to pick because you need to unlock something down the line, but you're never excited about actually picking the talent. That's probably the main issue I have with it. As you said, there's also issue with some of the weird pathing, especially with like the middle of the tree. If you want to get Shimmer, you have to give up a DPS talent, which never feels good. And some of the placement is also kind of weird. In general, I think the placement probably could have been worse.
Yeah, I could have made it worse if I wanted. That's a good point.
Yeah, also the all the conduits returning as like 3-pointers, I think with the bad pathing makes it feel a lot worse, just because not only are you having to take like these talents just to get to the stuff you want, you're also having to put in a lot of points into those talents, and it just doesn't really feel like you're getting enough out of it for 3 whole points.
Yeah, like when I was pathing this on my own, you know, just haven't playing Mage in a while, but I have played it in the past. One thing that I was noticing was like, okay, you're getting the stuff you want. You know, this stuff isn't that necessary. Mirror images is nice, but you could do without mirror images in PvE, right? But it's like alter time, that's bread and butter. Okay, well now I need to spend 3 more points in this tree to like kind of go on. You're gonna naturally kind of select spell steal or slow. This 4th row really seems, they always key in on certain rows and they want it to be like a utility row or a throughput row. Not all the time, but like pretty generally. And spell steal and slow are totally situational, and alter time and mirror are like much more relevant like all the time, right? But you have to path through both of these just to get Rune of Power. So if you wanted to grab something like Mirror Image before moving on, you're spending 12 points, which is the second most of any class in the entire game, just to move on to get something that's required. So maybe some way to path towards Rune of Power where you don't have to go through that, or a way to, like you guys mentioned the 3-point talents, right? I'm not insanely worried about placement. I'm not insanely worried about 3-point talents, because they've actually shown precedent to where they've removed those, and they've moved things around. They've made 3-pointers 2-pointers. You can have your build from 1 week to the next go from the same tree and almost the same placement, but you just basically have 5 more points to mess around with in like the middle of the tree. And that could make something like Mage way more attractive in the class tree, right? What do you guys think about stuff that's baseline that you have versus stuff that you guys have to pick? Actually, what does Mage even have baseline?
It's like
The normal
Bling, Eye Warp, Conjure Refreshment. You always have your barrier baseline. Frostbolt, Fire Blast. That's pretty much it.
So like one thing basically for each spec, and then just like basic Mage stuff. That's like most of the things actually. Oh, you guys also get your kick baseline, which is good too.
Oh yeah.
There's only one other triple DPS class beside. Oh no, there's 2 other triple DPS class currently released, and 2 of them do have kicks baseline. You guys are one. Before we really start building it out, how do you guys feel? We'll talk about the like going down to get Shimmer and losing DPS for it and stuff like that in a second. How do you guys feel about the capstones? Do you guys think the idea for capstones for Mage is good, and how do they interact with all the specs?
I hate it a lot, I guess, would be a nice way to put it.
Why is that?
Well, if you read Time Anomaly, it's like fully random. You can't control it. It's really unfun. Meteor is like, how it looks is they just like couldn't think of anything to put there. So Meteor is big ball hit hard. That's what it is. And it has interactions with all, oh wow, with all the specs. It can shatter with frost. It can, like, you can ramp with it in Arcane, and it costs a little mana, which actually is important for Arcane. And then it has like Ignite for fire, but it's very boring. It's just big ball. And then Shifting Power is like something I was expecting to come back, but it's pretty boring in my opinion.
It's
Yeah,
also
it
like
just-
way less potent because you don't have the conduits.
Yeah, that too.
And there's also something to be mentioned about shifting power being a DPS loss for Frost, because that doesn't really have any cooldowns to use it with.
Yeah. Yeah, the shifting power actually has relevance for the other two specs. And also, you guys are... It's about half and half of the classes that have been released in the game right now, where half of them have... Just to bring an example, I'll use Druid, because I have been using Shaman. Sorry if I'm sniffling a little bit. It's really stuffy. Our AC is actually out in our house, so it's rough. Druid here, for example, right? Like, they've got some issues with their spec trees, but their class tree is actually pretty great. And what you're committing to at the end, it takes very little time to get your throughput. And in the end, you're just stuck spending 10 points on purely what you need for that situation. It's actually fantastic for every spec. Same thing with Shaman. You get what you need much earlier, and then the power is just shifted into your spec tree. Now, not every class is built the same. I think classes with tanks and healers just have a way more wide variety of buttons, so they're able to do that much easier. But with the Mage decision to be pure throughput at the bottom, do you guys have the issue that most other classes have, where you really just want to kind of commit to 2 capstones, which means you have absolutely zero flexibility at the top of your tree to go up and grab tech for a specific fight or for a specific situation?
Another thing is like the capstones are so uncozy that like the stat nodes to the left and right in the middle, like you could argue that those are more valuable than the capstones, the 2% crit and haste.
Yeah.
So that always feels bad.
They've also designed this so that it's possible to get 2 of the capstones while also getting both points in the tome talents. So you have like the crit, you have the haste 2%, and then you also maybe have like time anomaly and meteor, but then you'd have to give up shimmer. And there's no way to get shimmer with all of those. If you want shimmer, you're going to have to give up one of the stat ones.
Also, I think anytime a class so far has had haste or crit or percent damage or main stat nodes, it just kind of comes across as they ran out of ideas. So they just kind of don't feel good on any tree. Like those are the things that you don't want in any tree. And I want to know how much of this you guys feel like applies to at least the Mage class tree, or maybe a few of the specs in general, even though we'll go more in depth later. Classes that have 3-point talents, almost objectively 3-point talents feel bad across the board. Every 3-point talent on every tree could be
Well,
like,
also,
man. Go ahead.
if you like look at those, the 3-point right there, you're never gonna take that. Like, because you can just get the one on the right and it's 1 point, and you're never gonna have enough points to spend 3 just to get a blink or the block thing.
Yeah,
unless like for PvP.
And I think that's there on purpose, and it's there to block you from getting shimmer without the top stuff if you wanted to like ignore this stuff. I mean, you're never going to ignore Rune of Power. So yeah, these definitely feel restrictive, because if you're looking to move down the tree, how would you ever choose 3% absorb after you blink over... Literally, this 1-point talent here could mean anything. It could say actually anything, but only require 1 point, and you would select it. That's an issue, right? The 3 things you don't want is you don't want 3-point talents. You don't want to get AoE-based abilities to get single target buffs, and vice versa. And more than anything, you want new cool combos you have not had before that changes the way you play your class, with the addition of already having everything you've had previously. Other classes have achieved that. How does Mage feel so far after playing it in regards to that?
Well, you can't really test with like all the builds, but most of the trees are stuff you like. At best, you can get like 1 or 2 new things maybe, but there's nothing that feels crazy new. But the general tree is you can get new things, I guess, like Greater Invis, Dragon's Breath. Those will be useful for situations. Blast Wave coming back to school. Being able to play Ice Flows instead of Shimmer on some fights will be good for all specs. And then there's just the main thing is there's a lot of points that just do nothing that you're forced to pick to get the stuff that are good. Like from a rating perspective, there's I'm gonna make up a number. There's like 8 actual good nodes, probably like 8 to 10 on this tree that you actually want, and you have to just swim through piss to get it all. Is the way I'd put it.
Yes, I think that's accurate description of the general tree.
Yeah.
And what Max said earlier, I think it will just end up being you pick the two capstones which are the best for you, and then the rest of the tree is basically just already laid out, because you have no options, you have no flexibility to pick any talents that you want.
And that's a big problem, but that's fixed very easily by a few changes. So other classes have done this where they've reduced their capstone beginning nodes here, these 3, to 2 points, and then you immediately just have flex points in the rest of the tree. And that's something that's helped a lot. But also something about your 3-point talents specifically is 3-point talents are not all built the same. Some of them are like, dang, all 3 of these are pretty nuts. But these are like 0.5 second reduced cooldown on blink per point. Think about that. Like 3% shield, like it just seems like these were released without actually thinking of the power level behind them, and things like that always change. It's just Definitely never a good thing to see 3-point talents that are also like, that's what you should try to do on your tree. Every point you spend should be relatively like similar to other points that you're spending. So the single point of 3 should be a decently similar power level to a single point of whatever this is, right? And then that's something I feel like they haven't captured. So certainly something to look at. We'll probably talk about more of these abilities as we go and more of the bad decision that we have to make, but we are going to start filling out these trees for Frost, Fire, and Arcane in that order, and then we will move on to the spec trees after, but we'll just do the general tree first. All right, so Norrinir, if you want to path me down for Frost in a, I don't know, does it differ a lot between single target and AoE, or is it very similar?
Well, I guess it depends. If you want to, you probably want to pick Shifting Power for AoE, so you would pick like Shifting Power plus Meteor because you want Dragon's Breath for Mythic classes, probably where you would use the AoE focus build.
Okay.
So yeah, it does, but I don't think it's a that big of a difference because as I said, or as we said, you're pretty much locked into a lot of choices depending on which capstone you choose.
Okay, cool. Path me down and I think that's fair to do. We'll do AoE first and then talk about how that changes to single target for you. Mainly because I think Frost is more of like typically an AoE spec instead of Fire, or at least a multi-target cleave spec. So let's go ahead and do like an AoE Mythic Plus scenario and then move it to single target after. And
Sure.
you can just tell me which
Alright.
point to take and where.
So you definitely want to get alter time, so you need to pick invisibility.
Okay.
Then you have an option of, I mean, it doesn't really matter what you pick here. Really, what you
Yeah,
like.
it's
I
the-
think
it's the
incantation of swiftness is probably
Better, more
that's probably
likely.
more utility. Yeah. Then you definitely pick alter time. From the middle tree, you need to pick Shatter because without Shatter, Frost doesn't really function. Then, obviously, remove Curse. You will pick Spell Steal because Frost has a lot of slows already.
Sure.
Now here's a question: like, if you run one of the Cone of Cold talents in the Frost tree, you will also need to pick Cone of Cold, which is kind of annoying because if you do not pick it in the general
Well,
tree,
yeah.
your
Also, I
class
feel
tree is
like
useless.
now we're gonna come back to this later. But if you're saying you want to pick Cone of Cold, I actually love that ability. He's talking about Snowstorm. Currently,
Yeah.
it doesn't really work quite well on Alpha, but it's gonna make Cone of Cold like a very realistic Frost AoE ability. I think it's an excellent design. So let's
Yeah, I
just
agree.
assume we're taking that for Frost AoE. So which means we are now moving on to the Bardom part of the tree and are not selecting Ice Block at the moment. We will always come back to that later. But
Yeah.
you also mentioned later that you wanted to go Meteor and Shifting Power, which means you'd be having a Frost Mage without Ice Block or Greater Invis. But let's continue.
Yeah, this is gonna be interesting. So you definitely want to pick Rune of Power. I mean, I'm not sure if it's definitive, but yeah, let's assume it's gonna be Rune of Power. We'll get into more reason why I want to pick the other one. Then you probably want to pick Shimmer, I guess. So you will have to go into
They're both
that.
good.
Then you want to pick the movement speed on Blink, the one under the yeah.
Okay.
So that you have some options for accessing the fire part of the tree. And now we need to get into the other part of the tree.
Okay, so so currently we haven't passed through the haste or crit nodes to get to the bottom, and the only real way to get over here at the moment is through Frost Nova duration, right? So that feels really bad, at least in a lot of PvE applications. How are you making your way over to Shifting Power?
I think you will go through like the ice block mirror image portion.
Well, getting Ice Block and getting Mirror Image is great. My only issue with this is like now this is not even ever an option, right?
Yeah.
So it's always going to be the 1 point just so you don't lose that. This is just whatever. You could definitely, as a Frost Mage, definitely consider maybe Rigid Ice for like dungeons or something, but
I'm
Ice
not
Block is more
sure,
situational.
but yeah. So you here you pick the 1 point. Then we can pick the 2-pointer. You probably want to pick Ice Nova. And I realized, do we have enough talents to? We have
No, you
10
do
points?
not. Currently, you
Yeah,
have
okay.
2 more talents spent,
Right.
which means you cannot get 2 capstones.
So you will pick Shifting Power and you will pick Dragon's Breath and you end there. I don't think you need Meteor for AoE because it splits damage. So I think this is probably something you will run.
Oh man. Okay. How do you feel about that?
Not great.
Dude, this is hard. Like, this is actually hard to look at. Like,
I agree.
Like, I go through so many other classes, and like when you told me you're at this point, and you wanted to path all the way back up through the top to get down to Ice Nova, and the main reason why is there's no easy way to get to the left side without taking absolute trash after Rune of Power. But it just all comes down. The positioning of the middle of this tree is a major issue, and I think it's something they'll have to look at. The more I've thought about it, the stuff at the top isn't as much of an issue,
Yeah.
but the middle just seems like it has a ton of problems.
Yeah, I think they're probably like you could optimize it maybe a bit, but essentially you will end up running something like this.
What would you change in a single target boss or like a 2-target cleave kind of boss? Think like Lords of Dread or Skull X.
Well, you wouldn't want to run shifting powers, so you would go for Meteor and Time Anomaly.
Okay. Which also includes Greater Invis. That's good for any raiding mages,
Yeah.
that's for sure. So you're pathing through the right, I assume, taking Blast Wave,
Last wave, yeah.
grabbing the haste, and then now we're sitting here at 17 points with 3 remaining to unlock the capstones. You currently have the ability to go into both that and anything else. Where are you spending those 3 points? I'm assuming Ice Block's one of them.
Yeah. Ice block. Yeah, the options here aren't great, so you probably just pick mirror image for the utility and then you go into the capstones.
Oh yeah, you can't even get to mirror image currently. You have to
Yeah, you probably pick the ice block cooldown reduction.
maybe alter
node.
time cooldown reduction as well. Like 1 point in alter time cooldown reduction, it also resets the cooldown, and then also 1 in ice block reduction just to like unlock it. That seems better than Frost Nova and potentially a second ice block. Like this is super fight dependent, right?
Yeah, I mean, it depends. Like, if you want the 20% CDR from mirror images, you would pick mirror images and
I
not
think
pick Master
in
of Time.
any
but-
rating you'd want mirror images always.
Yeah, I think
Yeah.
mirror image is probably like too good of a cooldown to pass up.
Oh,
in
I still have
raiding
Cone of
scenario.
Cold selected for Frost. I feel
Oh,
like
right.
that's something.
Yeah, that's
so
that's
take
something
that out,
we have
take
not
this
taken
out,
care
and then
of.
you could just slam this to unlock it. The
Yeah.
ice block reduction and then mirror. Cool. And then just
And now we
grabbing
can
both
pick the
capstones.
yeah. And we have one more point. We can put, I don't know,
Still
Probably
alter
Master Time,
time
I feel
on.
like.
It's probably Master
Yeah.
of Time, yeah.
probably. You
Okay.
cannot really do anything useful with, like, you cannot get to any big DPS point or talent anyway, so might as well just pick a utility.
I'm trying to identify which parts of this feel the worst, and I think all of these nodes at the end being so irrelevant for 3 points to get to capstone is one of the biggest problems, because it allows you to not go back up top because so much is needed to just get 2 caps, to where the power level of these things you're selecting would need to be much higher. It just seems like it seems like all 3 of these were just put here to not allow you to get more than 2 capstones, or to allow you to even begin to go down a second tree. If you made
Yeah,
these,
definitely.
and that's
There's also sorry, go ahead.
no, you go ahead.
Okay, if you just look at flow of time, it's probably my least favorite part of this. You wouldn't even want to pick it if it was just a 1-pointer, and the effect is just useless. If you have a 25-second cooldown on Shimmer, and you are reducing the cooldown by 1.5 seconds, it's like nothing.
Yeah, imagine a node that if a 3-pointer was made into a 1-pointer and you still wouldn't pick it, how like bad that feels to path down in your tree. Yeah, and I haven't thought a lot about it like PvP. I usually keep PvP consideration almost entirely out of these, but there are some, for some reason, it's like PvP in a lot of these trees is a reason why some things can't happen or happen the way that they do. But it does definitely feel bad that you can't have like a few extra points to go like get Tome of Ronin, for example, just for like a little bit extra stats, like that throughput node here and just how restrictive it is from cryo freeze. I just think you'd like to just see better pathing options from left to right in the middle of this tree, and then these 3-point nodes removed or changed.
I think you can get both the stat nodes and the double capstone, but you have to lose Shimmer, which you would
Yeah, you
never
can
do,
lose it
but
now.
that feels really bad. I think that would be fine, like, if there was a bunch of good nodes that you were like, oh, cool, I get this, but the majority of the nodes are just stuff you won't care about in most situations, which feels really bad. Like, look at the node below Mirror Image, the choice node. So that thing, it says when it dissipates due to direct damage, that's just not gonna work unless you're doing PvP, because how Mirror Image works right now is most things in dungeons and raids just don't proc it, so this is a useless talent, and then that seems a bit odd, just for like one example.
Yeah, so that's actually true with both of these. So both of these would basically have 0 effect ever in PvE, but you're
Yeah.
forced to take it just so you, like this 3-point talent could say anything and you would never even think about it.
Not only you're forced to take it to get down, you're forced to take it because the other one is a 3-point as well. So it's like a double dip forced take that you don't want to take, regardless of not wanting to take it in 10 different ways.
Giga huge problems. We'll move on to the Frost spec tree later, but now let's move on to Fuego Mage in most raid situations, and then we'll talk about pure Mythic Plus after, if it changes at all. Fired up.
So for Fire Mage, the first thing you can do, I guess, you go down the middle, you get Shadow or Chronicle, doesn't matter, and then remove Curse, Slower Spell, doesn't matter. I'd say getting both of these, you'll end up getting both of these anyway, but we can go towards Invis for now and get the Encounter Swiftness on the right. Which I really like that came back, actually. I think it's a really underrated conduit that we have in this expansion. I think it's really good. And another thing I wanted to add was if you do end up getting greater invisibility, currently on Alpha right now, you actually have access to invisibility and greater invisibility, which you might think is weird at first, but I actually think it could be cool if you could choose either. And why would you want to do that? It's so if you read the encounter swiftness, basically the idea is regular invis gives you the big movement speed and greater invis gives you the small one. And it would be cool if you could choose to either use it defensively if you do pick greater invis, or you could use regular invis to get the speed if you want that. So you'd have the choice to use it for the DR at the bottom or the regular one for the speed. I think would be cool.
And they that is cool. They do share CD as well, right? So like if you choose to use invis, is greater invis on a 5-minute cooldown?
Yeah, it is.
Yeah,
so
it's also vice versa. So like if you use G invis, then normal invis is on a 2-minute cooldown.
But the movement speed effect doesn't currently work like that. It's just if you choose greater invis, they're both the tiny one. Which maybe it's intended you don't like greater invis replaces invisibility, but I think it would be cool if you could keep both just to have the big movement speed in the back of the pocket if you needed it. So from this point you get alter time, and then you should be able to get Rune of Power from here.
I think you need one more point, and it's obviously Ice Block, I think.
Yeah, obviously Ice Block, and then Rune of Power, and then this point's another really good one: reduce magic damage taken by 3,000%. I think
it's 3% on Alpha, I think.
Yeah, but
3 and 6.
3,000 would have been really good too, but it's fine at 3%. That's really good for rating, and then you'll get Shimmer.
I think Fire might play Ice Flows a little bit, right?
It just depends on the fight. Like a good example for an Ice Flows fight in recent time would be Sludge Fist, where you can't really like blink, so you'd use Ice Flows, and that would be really nice for a fight like that. Or a fight like Stormwall Blockade back in BFA, where all your movements were very tiny, so having ice flows to play with feels really rewarding and really good at the same time. Okay, so for Fire for rating, you're probably just gonna want to go to Time Anomaly and Meteor for mainly the DR, and then or you could go shifting. I could see it going either way.
I think the issue with shifting more than Time Anomaly is just pathing over to shifting is gonna fuck you so bad. Like you are having to choose Frost Nova duration and accumulative shielding, or run it down from the top like you did with Frost, but like to go to the other middle one, you have so much more options because you just select temporal velocity, right? Not bad, like it's fine, right? And then you're chilling. You already have access to both of your capstones immediately from this. That's what I think the biggest problem in this tree is actually, is that like even if you wanted to go shifting power, you're hurting yourself so much to do that. Yeah,
the main thing you lose is the magic damage taken. 6,000% one, because you'd have to take the one on the left of Frost Nova, which not the greatest comparatively. And
well, I think also the thing under that is bad too.
Oh yeah, there's a lot that are bad, but that's okay. Okay, so for enough points to get down to the capstones, I just took the Ice Block reduction and Mirror Image, and then I think you're able to get one stat amp as well.
You can, yeah. So you have 3 more points, so you can either just choose for Critter Haste here,
yeah,
except you gain Blast Wave,
most likely.
And you gain Blast Wave in that way too. Where if you have to make a choice between these two, even assuming crit and haste are equal, Blast Wave is just better than 2 irrelevant things, right?
Yeah, if you need it. It doesn't like do good damage, it's just for the utility of like the knock.
Yeah, also Mass Polymorph is something we haven't really talked about that is actually potentially very, very cool. Like, think about a boss like Lihivam, right? Where you have someone permanently mass entangle, any boss like this, where you've had someone mass entangle and add and just keep it away. Obviously, it has like a restriction between, it's like humanoid and something else, right?
Humanoid, like beast. I think that's it.
Yeah, so it's like not a lot of ads, but it is a like potential raid at least mass. In Mythic Plus, it's just a stop, right?
Well, in Mythic Plus, it's also potentially a way to like skip packs. The only thing that's a little bit dicey about it is that it says it transforms enemies within 10 yards and it's a cast time. But like if you're the Shimmer, like right at the end of the cast, you could potentially like skip an entire pack. Since you could run through the pack, you'd have aggro on it, you'd invis, and everyone else who runs through would not have aggro. So effectively, you just skipped a whole pack of mobs.
That's very cool. All right, yeah, so Mass Poly is something we haven't talked about yet. When we talked about like the stuff you do like to see, I think it's absolutely something that's like pretty sick. And then moving through to Haste, right?
Yeah, and then you just get the capstone nodes. And then if you did end up wanting shifting power instead of meteor, all you do is swap the DR to like the left side, and then you would get time anomaly and shifting power.
Just from the basic general class tree, how does this feel for Fire as far as what you used to have versus what you have now? It seems for Fire, like, I don't know, just the fact that Fire is gaining greater invis, that sounds so insane.
Yeah, the unfortunate thing is if you want shifting power, you have to give that up. So to me, like, even though time anomaly seems kind of not great, I feel like in most raiding situations, you're going to want to just go that route for greater invisibility. It's just so good.
Dude, someone in my stream called mass polymorph skip. You just talked about Walmart Shroud. Okay, so that's it. Oh yeah, you do have 1 point, and then probably Master of Time.
Yeah, that's one of the good talent points.
Dude, I hate this. I'm sorry. Like the fact that it's just like, yep, and you get here. The fact that any class tree that exists just gets to the last part and it's like, and just slam these two, and like you don't even talk about what you're getting because none of the stuff on the way to Time Anomaly or Meteor even matters. Even though like Greater Invis is great, you're just thinking about what you're getting under it, and these points are just worthless.
Well, also I could see like an argument for just going for stats for some specs, like instead of another capstone, like just the 4% crit could be better than like any
Time
given
Anomaly.
one of these, like any of them. It could be. I could see an argument for it.
And
Probably not for fire, but yeah.
I feel like if you were to say that about any tree that went with the like 50-50, it seems, design decision to have your class tree be DPS capstones at the bottom. If you were to take these nodes that are typically considered complete filler, ran out of things to put onto the tree nodes to just help with pathing, if you're considering one of those 2 point in any stat to compete with getting a capstone, that means your capstones nearly aren't good enough. Like their power level just has to be increased by a lot because you're investing so much for just this button. Dragon's Breath in a lot of scenarios kind of doesn't matter for a lot of specs, especially in raiding. Right, you're spending 4 points just to have the option to select Meteor, and if these buttons are not competing with like 1.2% crit nodes, then that's like a major problem with just the capstone idea in general.
Also confounding that they put Time Anomaly here because that's a talent that we basically have never used. Like it's been on our Arcane tree for a good while, and it's so sporadic and random and bad that you just don't use it, and they decided to feature it here as like a capstone.
Just like an idea if they wanted to replace it, I think the Lust Legendary would be really cool. A lot of people would use that. The only reason I could see that being bad is it's kind of useless in PvP because you're not really having Lust at all. The Lust Legendary is like you don't gain the benefit or the debuff of your own Lust, so that'd be really good in PvE content as like an alternative.
You bring up a really good point of how a lot of these trees have things that can't exist because of PvP. Like I mentioned this earlier on Twitter. Like when I was talking about the priest tree, all I was thinking of was I was really expecting dispersion and silence to be in the general class tree for all things of priest. And then I was like, man, it's like really sucks they didn't get that. But I'm like, okay, that would totally break PvP probably. Like that's the only reason that can't happen. In PvE, that would not break anything. Holy Priest and Disc Priest would kill to have a defensive. They go halfway through their tree just to get a 6% extra damage reduction on Fade. Like that's how bad they need defensives, right? Like, and obviously healers having kicks is clearly fine. I wonder if there's something they can do where, just like what you said, if PvE mages would prefer to have the Lust Legendary, if they can keep Time Anomaly for PvP, if that's something.
Well, I doubt PvP wants that. I doubt anyone is like hyped about this talent.
Yeah, it would just be weird that if any single capstone would be irrelevant in the other version.
Yeah,
of the game.
that is true. And like to build off what you said about like the PvP versus PvE thing, I kind of feel like it's the opposite here, where there's a lot of talents that are only good in PvP. Like just read Shatter, and like there are applications for that in M+. You like think their idea is like you Frost Nova and then like try to get a cast off, but then it's just gonna like break. I guess we're on the fire tree. Look at the far right, the blazing barrier icon. Like that's very clearly like PvP only. Like what is that? And then there's a few talents in Frost that are PvP only as well. But
Maybe someone who designed these trees, I actually have no idea who the mage dev is. I know a lot of the other ones. Maybe they designed it with much more PvP stuff in mind, but I know that the PvPers all like universally hated it, so I assume that it's probably just problematic in general. Like stuff like this is actually, I'm glad you pointed that out. We'll talk about it more later, but this is actually really rare. Like having something that you would never use in PvE ever and only use in PvP, that's not on a lot of trees. There are some classes that don't even have any of those, so definitely giving points of feedback on that would be good. All right, does fire ever consider shifting power in any scenario?
yeah, I could see you just taking instead of Meteor. Kind of just depends. Especially in M+, you're always going to take it over Meteor. In rating, I'm not sure. It's probably close on which one you take.
All right, what do you like change really to go down to shifting power instead of Meteor? I'm just assuming you just stop it right here, take the
You
point
get
out
rid
of
of
this.
the... No, you can keep the haste. You just get rid of that one, and then you go down from there. It's just the magic damage or Frost Nova icon is what you
I
swap.
see, yeah. And then Ring of Frost, and that is just based on whatever. Then you
And then
have
you get
one more
the-
point, Master of Time.
Or the 3% magic damage.
Yeah, it depends on the fight, probably. Yeah, definitely. Okay, so at least it's like 2 cookie cutter builds, but this definitely feels a lot more like a hunter tree or a DK tree, where when you're getting to the bottom, it's just like you're just the choices. The amount of like you want choice on your tree. You obviously don't want to choose between things you already have. You want to choose between like cool things that are based on a fight. Like you want to be able to spec out of spell steal or slow on a fight where those things are irrelevant, you know? Like spell steal in my mind is the exact same as like cleanse spirit or hex or cap totem or something. And these are all things that you don't have to path through. They're things that after you're done with your tree, you just have 5 or 6 points to just select whichever one of those kind of fits your situation. And when you don't select them, you have the ability to gain something that could help you. And then it's not huge. It would be something like this, right? Like 2 points to make Gust of Wind 5 seconds shorter, or Spirit Walk shorter by 15 seconds. You know what I mean? Like just like minimal stuff like that. Mage has none of that. You're picking between like really boring options and you're just hard-lined set. So I think your all's tree in general is just short of points, meaning that like you're spending too many points to get certain stuff. That can be fixed in a variety of ways. No reason to talk about it. And then also, how many dead talents are there on this tree where if you had extra points, you would never even think about putting them in there? Is it like 5? Maybe more?
Probably even more.
Yeah, there's a lot.
Tempest
When I
Barrier?
went through it earlier, I counted like 19 that could be potentially useless, not always useless, but that's like a bit. It's fine.
Okay, Preheat, where are you going for Arcane?
So swapping over to Arcane, at the very top, it's going to be more of the same, right? I'm going to go Invisibility. I'm probably going to pick up Shatter, and then we're going to go Ice Block. From there, we're going to want to pick up probably Remove Curse, because we're going to want to route our way down to Rune of Power, so we're going to pick that up. We're going to pick up Spell Steal as well, and then we're obviously going to want Alter Time, so we're going to put in either Grounding Surge or Incantation of Swiftness, probably Surge in Mythic Plus, and then that unlocks our next row.
Yeah.
So we're going to go Rune of Power here, and then you're noticing a trend, right, with the Rune of Power versus Incanter's Flow. I could definitely see a situation where maybe Frost would want Incanter's Flow, like in some situations, but overall this doesn't really seem like a choice to me. But
I think
it'll
it's a
also
good
be too strong
choice.
if you had to pick. If you could pick both, it'd be too strong.
I
though.
feel like it's an excellent choice node. I just feel like the tuning is not correct. Like the fact, like having to choose between on-demand cooldown big burst button with kind of passive damage increases throughout the fight. That is fundamentally what a choice node should be. That is good. It's just that Incanter's Flow needs to be better. Not much to talk about.
Yeah, and then from here, we're definitely going to want to pick up either Shimmer or Ice Flow. So I'm going to put in, and this is obviously going to like depend on which capstone you want, but I'd probably slot in Arcane Warding there. And then we're going to need to pick up some more points. So going back, we're definitely going to want like some of the stat stuff. I'm not sure like for how Arcane like works right now. I'm not sure if you're going to want haste or crit, but I'd probably go with crit. Unfortunately, we don't have anything down there, so let's just
Dude,
double
if
back.
you are, what is the emote people keep typing in my chat? The Troll Despair emote. You are a living Troll Despair emote if you ever realize that you need critical strike chance.
Yeah.
Like it's actually, it's just over. Like look at this. You just fucking run it down mid with just all this stuff that doesn't matter except for literally mirror image in that alone, just to grab this. That's so rough.
Yeah, especially rough too, because we probably aren't going to want to pick up Shifting Power, so it's kind of like we're putting all this work and we're just going to stop right there. But I think for now, let's go back to Winter's Protection. That's up at the top, routing down from Ice Block, get Mirror Image. Oh, you already have those. Okay, cool.
Yeah, we're good. We're chilling.
And then let's start thinking about which capstones we want. So I think right now for Arcane, you're probably going to want Meteor and like Time Anomaly. So we're going to slot in 2 into Temporal Velocity, which will unlock both of those.
Yeah, and then no creativity whatsoever with the last 11 of your points, by the way, unlike what you would do with any other class. Like, I want to show it back to back. Okay, here's the end of every single mage spec, ready? And I know I'm like referencing the shaman tree a lot, but I think it just needs to be addressed how different these two things are depending on what class you play. You hit this, and then it's just no thought. You just pick 2, slam to the end. Dude, I'm just going to, like, is this Ellie? Like, I'm just going to do this real quick. It's not going to take any time at all. Astral Bulwark, slam this, that, Astral Shift, grab the Leech, get Graceful Spirit. At this point, right now, you have basically all the throughput you're ever going to get on your tree. 16 points out of 31. And then you get strong defensives. You get the Ankh thing. You get Winds of Valakir. You get Gust of Wind. You unlock the bottom. You grab Nature's Swiftness, which you could argue is a damage increase, pretty minor. You have 10 points. None of this stuff is anything you need on any encounter. 10 points. Grab Windrush Totem, grab Nature's Guardian, something that's pretty relevant all the time. Still skipping most of this stuff. Grabbing AG Mana Spring Totem as soon as it's buffed. You still have 3 points after all this stuff that's optional. You can grab Kick on a Kick Fighter, Mythic Plus. You can grab Cap Totem in both those situations. Based on the dungeon or the pull, you could grab like Cleanse Spirit. Like what is this? And then you guys want to know what you guys do with the last like 15 points? You put them in the exact same spot every time and you never think about anything.
Yeah, the only thing I would add to this is that I could see a situation maybe in like AoE where you might actually pick up Ice Nova, simply because that's the only way really to guarantee that you're going to get the benefit of Shatter. And Arcane does have the benefit of having spells that like don't have a travel time, especially like Arcane Surge, potentially. So I could maybe see a situation where you'd like Arcane Surge into an Ice Nova and get the Shatter benefit. But I mean, you just have 1 point, right? So you can just really put it wherever.
Troll Despair emote. That tree needs actual Jesus. All right, so any more thoughts from you guys on the general tree before we move on to some spec specific stuff?
Yeah, I have a few thoughts. Just like a little bit at the end, the capstones. I feel like there could be some important choices with like the Dragon's Breath, Greater Invis, Ice Nova road, the extra one. Currently, how it is you're just like looking for the capstones, but if they were somewhere else on the tree, you could like, okay, I want Dragon's Breath, but I don't want to have to go all the way down to Meteor for M+ to get some like an idea like that. It feels like it's not actually a decision like that right now. I had a few ideas of like traits they could add instead of like the really boring ones as well. They're mostly Torghast powers that they've already used, and one of them is, so after you blink, you spawn a mirror image for 10 seconds. So that would be a little bit added defensive utility that you could choose to use blink for movement or use it for the 20% DR for 10 seconds, and that could be pretty cool.
I like that. And sounds insane, but yeah, I like that a lot.
Definitely. And then the other idea would be to change shifting power, because it doesn't really fit the mage theme. And there's a Torghast power that is pretty similar. It's spells casting alter time reduce your remaining cooldown of all spells by 1 second. But instead of like tying it to alter time, it can be its own button or something. They could call it like shifting time or something. And then it would just be you cast a spell and then you reduce your cooldown by 1 second instead of just doing the little channel thing. It would feel probably more rewarding in my opinion, and it would fit the mage theme more.
Yeah, that's actually something that's interesting, is the other Covenant abilities they brought back were either thematic to the class in general, or they actually changed them to be more thematic. Like Condemn came back for Warriors, for example, or is coming back for Warriors, apparently, it got Datamined. But they just tied it to Execute, because the whole Shadow Venthyr thing doesn't really fit with being a Warrior, and the Night Phase shifting power probably doesn't really fit with being a Mage.
One more thought on this tree before we move on. So Greater Invisibility is on this, which is obviously great for Fire and Frost, but Arcane loses exclusive access to Greater Invisibility, and we'll get to it later, but it doesn't have a defensive to make up for it. So essentially it's just like another added buff to like playing Frost or Fire. I know that there's probably some PvP concerns, but I feel like moving Cauterize to the class tree would do a lot to like help Frost and Arcane just be like more playable across the board.
Now that's a spicy one, but yeah, I'm not gonna try to imagine what like that means for PvE, because like, or PvP, because like Cauterize is probably insane for that, but I don't think the other specs need Cauterize with them having Greater Invis, but I kind of see your point about Arcane. It's like, this is the reason you brought an Arcane Mage. It hasn't happened in a while. Greater Invis used to be stronger, right? I think it was like 90 or 80 or something, long time ago, right?
Yeah, a long time ago.
So like long time ago it was that, and you would actually bring Greater Invis as a functional immunity, kind of similar to like what you used to do with Dispersion as well. And now it's not quite at that level. Since they made it 60, I don't think you've made strats around Greater Invising things. It's just something that's just like, I mean, a 2 minute 60% reduction doesn't matter how many seconds it lasts. It's so good. So I think that's enough to like, the thing is I don't think Arcane was like a problem defensively. I think Arcane was fine in a raid, and I think Frost desperately needed something and they got it. And I think having cheat death across all specs would be a little bit more thematic, because like rogues kind of have like cheat death across all 3 specs. The only other class in the game with like a really functional cheat death. So I could kind of see it, but it is also like fire themed.
Another thing too is like Fire is already so well off, right, with Cauterize, and like gaining Greater Invisibility and then comparing that against like Arcane, for instance, it really feels like you're missing a defensive talent to pick.
Ooh, someone in my chat actually just had a banger idea. What about Cauterize and Cold Snap being a choice node in the Mage tree? So you choose between having 2 ice blocks or having Cauterize. That's actually that's actually good. I like that a lot.
That would feel better than the 2 second longer Frost Nova, I think.
What? No, it's not just a 2 second longer Frost Nova. It's
It's 1 point per 1 second Frost Nova duration increase. It's not even that good.
And you also forgot that they nerfed Frost Nova to 6 seconds, so they could add back this talent to get it back to 8 seconds.
Wait, they
It
nerfed
is now.
Frost Nova duration just so they could add in a point that increases it?
Yeah, I'm not sure if,
course.
if it
What
was
is the name?
actual
What is
reason,
the
but it
name of
is
this
6
emote? One
seconds.
second, I gotta copy paste something. That is actually absurd. Okay,
Oh, speaking of other
go ahead.
nerfs,
Go ahead.
Dragon's Breath, also 45-second cooldown. I mean, obviously getting this as like Frost and Arcane, it's huge for Mythic Plus. But having that 45-second cooldown there and having it so out of reach for most builds feels pretty bad. I think it's like 25 right now on live.
It's 24, and it was very good at 24 seconds. I could
Yeah.
see this being a warranted nerf, especially for like PvP. I'm sure everyone non-mage is happy that this is 45.
Okay, we're gonna stop talking about the class tree. Any more final class tree takes before we move on to specs?
I think we pretty much touched on anything, everything. The last thing that I want to mention that if you're looking for some nice utility nodes, there's always Blazing Speed or Flame Glow.
Okay. I'm trying to think if there's anything mages had that was like super cool they don't already have. It's not like mages currently are like mad about like what they have currently in the game. Like mages are a pretty good class, right? I wonder just what else they could add. Like because that's what you have to suggest, right? Like if you guys think these buttons are lame and you think there's like better options, like what things like Fired Up mentioned some Torghast powers. What are other things that are actually really cool? Let's just keep it just a PvE that they could bring back from the game in the last 10 years. That would be good. A lot of deep freeze spammers.
Like there's nothing like too cool there. It's basically just they added in a bunch of artifact power azurite traits in the conduits, but like trying to think of something like the blink node above the 3% DR. They could change that to cauterizing blink, which is basically a heal instead of a shield, but it's like it's whatever. I don't really care which one it is. The main thing that's bad about it is it's a 3-point node.
What about Arcane? Or what is it called? Prismatic Crystal.
Oh no.
I think
No?
with the current design for how bosses are, I feel like Prismatic Crystal would be like kind of a big problem for a lot of bosses. I personally am like a big fan of that talent, but I think it's also one that's like a very hot take. A lot of people really hate that talent.
Yeah, no,
I think it
and
also doesn't really fit right now.
It's a good thing to bring up. Just talk about it, dude. I don't even remember Deep Freeze. Why is Deep Freeze being spammed? Is it a PvP angle?
Yeah, so if you're talking about like PvP stuff, Deep Freeze is by far like one of the most overpowered things we've ever had. Basically, it was like if you chilled an enemy, you could freeze them, and it was a stun that mages had. And for Frost, it like amplified all your damage because back then, Mastery would like increase the damage you did to frozen targets. So it was just like a button that you press, and then you just one-shot someone with like a Frostbolt back in Cataclysm.
Yeah, and also it was pretty nice in PvE because Frost was quite bad, so it did like tons of damage.
Yeah, so if you couldn't freeze the target, it just did a bunch of damage, and it made Cold Snap for Frost almost like a DPS cooldown because you could just deep freeze twice.
Yeah, I remember at the end of Wrath when doing like the heroic dungeons, you would just defreeze, close and defreeze, and the boss would just die.
As far as other stuff though, I mean, Focus Magic is an obvious one, but I hate buffs like that, so I don't really want to see that on the tree, but I do think that also might be like something that Blizzard would think up to put on there.
All
We're
right.
trying to bring some real broken stuff in. You can bring Mana Shield back.
Or Temporal Shield.
Okay, I have a lot of takes about this upcoming tree. Norrinir, you're going to be the person kind of writing me down. At any point, again, super informal, if any of you guys have any thoughts on decisions or abilities or things you have to choose that feel bad or good or anything like that, feel free to chime in.
You wanted to pick the first 8 first and then go into the second tier right away, right?
Unless stuff is like giga obvious, the idea of doing this is picking the 8 things that are most like required, basically.
That's the fun thing because Frost has 9 things which are required.
Yeah.
Okay, then
Yeah.
then we'll move on with the 9. That's not too bad. So if you're just looking at it based on other trees, 9 is like the average amount people spend in the top, I think, of all the classes in the game. Obviously the worst being 15, and some classes get away with 8, but it just kind of depends on what happens below that. So that's not super bad. Go ahead.
Well, it kind of is because you're just picking like your core abilities which you have right now, like the really important stuff without which the spec just doesn't function. Like if you ended up picking like more than 9 nodes because there was a good node that you wanted to pick, I think that's fine. But you literally have to pick 9 nodes just to like get to where you are right now in terms of core abilities. So you definitely have to pick Ice Dance, obviously, Frozen Orb, Blizzard, Fingers of Frost, Glory. Then you need to pick Cold Snap because without Cold Snap you cannot get Icy Veins. Then you also need to pick Brain Freeze, because without Brain Freeze, your Flurry
This is
does
actually
nothing.
something I want to start looking at before anything else. You just said you can't get Icy Veins without picking Cold Snap. Well, what happens if there's a raid fight when Cold Snap is actually irrelevant to you and you don't want this, right? Like that's a problem. It's the same thing with Blizzard, right? Like why on a single target raid fight do you have to select Blizzard when hunters, hunters, for example, in the middle of their tree can route out an entire single target tree without ever even selecting multi-shot? They just gain single target viability by knowing that they're never going to press this button. BM Hunter can route out entirely away from, Beast Cleave and multi-shot and just fill out their whole tree. Why are mages forced to picking up two things that are not relevant on every raid fight just to get to another thing at the bottom, which we can even talk about how they broke down Icy Veins into like 4 nodes, right? So we'll talk about that later. But yeah, the stuff at the top and the fact, like, you're going to have to spend some abilities to get buttons you have. That's kind of the point of this. Imagine someone logging in at level 10, they get overwhelmed with like 1 million abilities. That's one of the points of these talent trees, is that you kind of get things one at a time and you are learning things a little bit at a time. It's to help new players join the game, and also splitting out things from being baseline. Go ahead.
I think the problem is if you look at Flurry, right, and then you look at Winner's Chill, basically if you don't have Winner's Chill on Flurry, it doesn't really do anything, like at all. Same with Brain Freeze, because Flurry is an unhasted 40-second recharge. So essentially if you don't have these 2 talents below it, which aren't even giving you a new ability, right? They're just making the ability real. Then the button is just like it's just not a button you would ever really press. So essentially this is like a 3-point node for Flurry, and it's on the first row.
So you notice this with classes throughout these trees being released that have less overall things going on in general. And the only way that these trees make sense to fill out is to fill out these nodes. Like this could be in 2 different ways, right? This could be all 3 of these things are attached to Flurry and you don't have to select them, but then these 2 points are just haste and crit nodes. And the only way away from that is bringing back old abilities or inventing new talents in their place, which again is just a crapshoot. Some classes are getting that, other classes aren't. Frost Mage doesn't have a lot going on, right? So there's a reason why the top of your tree is all just making you spend multiple points just to get the same thing. It's kind of unfortunate.
Yeah, definitely.
Cold Snap, because we have to, apparently.
You can deselect Frostbite. We don't need Frostbite. Okay, so now we can get into the second row. We have 1 point over. Here you definitely pick Lonely Winter. That's pretty much given, I think. Then you can unlock Icy Veins by going down this Winter Tide. It's also like a 3-pointer that just feels bad to take. I mean, it's a decent effect, but it's entirely passive and just...
Yeah, don't need to go too deep into it. All 3-point talents feel bad, even ones that are powerful. You can just do the same thing with 2, and just give more options. And then Snowstorm, which we'll talk about later, is an excellent alternative to this for like AoE situations.
So now you need to unlock Bone Chilling on the other side. So you pick Arctic Piercing,
Okay.
you pick Bone Chilling, and then you pick all the Icicle talents. So Flash Freeze, Ice 9, both points. And now we have, how many points do we need to get to 20? One more.
It? Oh, I get Frigid Shattering, right?
No, it's bad.
That's one of the talents that are like PvP.
Oh my
only.
god, Rooted and Frozen. I forgot it's both.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's a PvP one and also
here
Frostbite.
You probably pick, I really want to pick the 2 charges on Flurry because it's a super nice quality of life, but if you're talking about DPS, you probably want to pick either Frozen Touch or the new talent Focused Frost.
Let's play around with Focus Frost.
Now you pick Splitting Ice. Well, let's start with Icy Winds. So let's do Icy Propulsion.
Sure.
Then you pick 2 points in Chain Reaction. Then you pick Tremolo Void, which is like the big thing what we are building it around.
Mm-hmm. Yep.
Then you definitely want Slick Ice because Slick Ice is overpowered. So that's you need to take.
Sorry, where is that? Down here. Yeah.
there's a
2 points in the
Terrible
This
talent.
is a
1 point per 1.5 second increased duration on a spell that you are trying to keep up for a long period of time. It is extremely low value, and then Slick Ice is super good.
yeah, and again this is like the talent above the Icy Veins duration increase. That's one of the talents that I wouldn't even want to spend 1 point on, and we have to spend 2 points. And now we need to pick Splitting Ice, and we have 1 point to spend into the Hailstones. That's the point under Splitting Ice.
Oh, you put a point into Hailstone instead of like.
Oh,
Ray Frost,
definitely.
okay.
I think this is a like super OP talent, or has the potential to be super OP.
I really like the design of it for Glacial Spike as well, because
Yeah, I
the
agree.
problem with Glacial Spike in the past was it was so important that you would forego pressing Ice Lance, and the talent above it makes it so Ice Lance is always worth pressing.
Yeah, it also means that you have like mastery scaling on Ice Lance as well, since it's generating icicles. It's just very unfortunate though that we can't really put more and more talent into that.
Yeah, it's just because you're I mean, it's very simple. That can be solved alone by just fixing the improved icy veins nade. Oh my god, you know what I mean. And putting slick ice in its spot, and just making this baseline, right? Or even worst case scenario, making it a 1 point. However, okay, let's just say Glacial Spike is the build you want to play. What do you have to give up to play Glacial Spike?
Well, you would give up probably to Thermal Void because if you are spending a lot of time casting Glacial Spikes and not getting Icicles at all, that's probably something worth mentioning right now. Because of the way Icy Propulsion works, you get the cooldown reduction on each of your Icicle hits, or I should say crits. If you are casting Glacial Spike, you don't get those 5 crits or 5 potential crits from the Icicles. So
Okay.
your cooldown reduction from Icicles is basically non-existent, so you don't want to be playing with Thermal Void. Yeah, and you can probably also just do away without chain reaction. I think you probably have to rebuild the entire tree because Icy Propulsion just sucks without Thermal Void. It's a bit unfortunate that it is structured in this way because Icy Propulsion just does nothing if you don't have Thermal Void, and you have to pick 2 points if you want to get some of the nicer talents, like, I don't know, say you want to do some funnel and you want to pick what's it called, freezing
yes.
winds. You have to pick Icy Propulsion, which might do nothing if you don't pick Thermal Void. Yeah, I'm honestly not sure how I would build it around Glacial Spike. It's just super annoying to do.
Yeah, it just sounds like the reason why I asked you that is Glacial Spike is definitely like one of the few different ways that Frost Mage plays totally differently, right? That's something you want to be accessible, and kind of the point I wanted you to get to is that it's really not. You're giving up way too much power to do it, and it's not really a viable option. Or even if it was a viable option, you'd be giving up something that makes your class less fun to do it, and that's just a bad decision to make. And then another issue is this thing in the bottom totally AoE? It seems like it's more of a single target potential thing to think about, right? Like,
yeah, it's more like a cleave talent.
Yeah.
With the talent above, you will be getting like multiple stacks per Frostbolt cast, hopefully. That makes the Cold Front talent okay-ish. I like wouldn't be excited about picking this talent, but it might work.
Yeah, my only issue is if they ever like tuned this to be good in like a raid based on like a tier bonus or something, you'd have to like grab Freezing Rain on the way there too, to where it wouldn't really have a lot of viability for pure single, or it would be something you'd be picking for no reason on the way to doing something. But I mean, I doubt you'd ever pick this for pure single anyway. It seems like they kind of just, for pure single, like they want you to route you to the Thermal Void path or Glacial Spike. So
Yeah.
what are your all's thoughts on the Frost Tree, just in general? I have a few, but your all's opinion is more important.
I could go if that's okay.
Yeah, go ahead.
Okay, so from what it seems like to me, it's what you said, it's like either Glacial Spike or Icy Veins. And like historically before this expansion, Icy Veins has been a pretty bad cooldown. So I like that you can kind of make it a good cooldown with the talent points, but it seems like you have to spend so many. And it would feel a lot better if you didn't have to spend talents into the things below the capstones. This whole area by the Icy Veins seems like it should just be all for Icy Veins and Chain Reaction. And Chain Reaction's a good talent, but it's like it doesn't really contribute to it, so it doesn't really make sense. And then the Icy Veins one is just it feels bad to get 1.5 seconds. Icy Propulsion feels good, Thermal Void feels good, and then the Slick Ice one feels good. If you don't want to go the Icy Veins route, then you can pick up like Glacial Spike, and I do like how you can choose to go like either dump your points in a Icy Veins or choose other stuff like the extra Flurry Charge or Focus Frost, other stuff like that. The other thing is Comet Storm is kind of hard or feels really bad to get to right now, but there's not the far left talent yet, Node. I bet Node, that one's gonna own.
That's probably gonna be Ice Barrier talent.
I think it's gonna be PvP because it's on the same line as Frigid Shattering, and it's like kind of in the same spot. I could definitely see it being like they clearly like to line up those decision makings on these rows, and this is symmetrical to the other one. So like I could definitely see it not being something you want. Yeah, Comet Storm's really hard to get to.
The main reason is just the talent right by it is pretty bad, or at least it was bad back when it was a thing, and it's not like anything fun to think about.
Another thing with Icy Propulsion is that if you look at the tooltip, so it says it's only single target spells now, which means that Frozen Orb, which is like a big contributor to Icy Propulsion currently, just doesn't work for this. So essentially if you're like doing funnel, right, or like Frost is kind of known for doing funnel, essentially that aspect of the spec is kind of killed off by this.
Yeah, it's gonna be really hard to keep up 100% Icy Veins uptimes, which I think is the the goal of this sort of area?
I assume it'll be tuned around that, right? And essentially, if you're ever casting Blizzard or Frozen Orb or anything that isn't, like a single target spell, you're just gonna lose out on uptime.
Yeah, I should also mention that just the icy propulsion design, I saw it coming. I saw them adding icy propulsion back to the tree, but I kind of hate it. It is tied to having ice veins active, because a lot of time during raids you get into a situation where the boss goes untargetable or goes immune or something like that, and you cannot hit the boss for a while. Your icy veins drops, you do not get the cooldown reduction, and now you're sitting there with like 2-minute cooldown on your icy veins, and your damage is useless. You don't do any damage. I really hate that they are pretty much forcing us into this 100% uptime if you want to do okay damage build with like icy veins.
It's a ton of problems. Like the other things that exist like this in the game, Breath, for example, is like on a class I play, Frost DK, right? Like Breath is awesome when it works, when you have like full uptime, but anytime you're moving between packs and it drops, that feeling is so much worse than like the benefit. Even though I love Breath, I actually love it. It's just that those things have massive downsides that could have like things built in to make them feel less bad. Plus, it also seems like, I'm just looking at this right now. These trees are going to get iterated on. All of them are going to get iterated on. A lot of them have already. Can't chain reaction just get moved up in the tree? Improved icy veins is just baked into icy veins, and you just move slick ice and thermal void up to where they're just 1-point selections off of icy propulsion, and then it actually allows you to interact with the rest of this tree and potentially play other important spells they have laid out that don't necessarily contribute to this, but could make your class more interesting to play. It just seems like you're so locked in. Like the second you do this, the second you're just like, all right, I'm an icy veins gamer, which I think is really likely to be the case. You're like, what can you do? There's nothing else you can do. Like there's just too many icy veins icons in the thing. They need to be reduced.
Yeah, the talents. There's like all the talents in this tree too. It just seems like they're just saying like slight increase on ice lance, slight increase on icicles. It feels like that talent is repeated just like throughout all of this. There's another talent too that I think Norrinir, you should probably talk about it. Arctic piercing, and how that kind of throws a wrench in the whole idea of like not munching procs.
So this is a talent that's coming back from Legion, and it's always been an issue even back in Legion, because it essentially like forces you to spam Frostbolt. If you have this talent, which in Legion it was an artifact node, it was really good, and it basically made all the active talents useless. Because whenever you cast your active talents, whenever you cast Glacial Spike or your Ray of Frost or something like that, you're not critting with Frostbolts, your ice lances are doing 30% less damage, and all your damage is gone. So this is like a talent which reduces talent diversity, because it just forces you back into the, oh, I don't want to pick any active talents because they actively hurt me. This is just a bad design. I was hoping we wouldn't see this talent again, or this effect again.
Yeah, that seems really rough. Like, I think that clearly the design of it is like bad luck protection in a way. It's like, oh, wait, you're not getting procs? Well, that's okay. If you're casting Frostbolt a lot, then maybe you'll just have like increased damage for when you actually do Ice Lance for a few seconds, and you're not supposed to keep it up, but obviously it's keep upable, so you're just going to focus on that, and it's like a short duration and not very interactive, right? Just not good design.
Yeah. All right. I had some more points I wanted to mention. So I just want to quickly go back to the icy propulsion. I think like one of the fixes they could do is they could just make it not tied to icy veins, that you could get the CDR anytime. Obviously, you would have to reduce the effect to like, I don't know, one second instead of 2 seconds. But then the talent would actually work even for like Glacial Spike. Yeah, if you wanted to play the Glacial Spike with, let's say, freezing winds, you could actually put these points into icy propulsion and actually have them do something instead of just sitting there doing nothing. I think that's probably the best path I would take if I wanted to do something about icy propulsion.
I also think, is there any weird choices on this tree? Well, the one thing I pointed out at the very beginning is that one of the cool things that a lot of classes are able to do in this game is you're like, oh, well, why do I have to talent into these abilities I already have? Like, I already explained why that's the thing. But like a lot of classes, you actually don't. Like for the first time ever, you can spec out of, swipe on a fight where you're never going to press swipe. And that 1 point can go into making you better in scenarios where you're not swiping. That is good. It's just, there's absolutely scenarios in PvE at least where you would never cold snap. There's also scenarios in PvE where you would never blizzard. And the only way you can go down to get icy veins, and like just, again, the example of like a pure single target raid fight, is by grabbing both of those. And those 2 points are like heavily felt throughout the tree. Those 2 points are not having Frozen Touch or Ebb and Bold. Those points are not having Flurry 2 charges. Also, is this correct? Can you select Flurry without Flurry 2 charges without even having Flurry at all?
Yeah.
You can.
Right, so like, so that doesn't really make sense.
If you take a look at the tree and just take a look at Brain Freeze and look at how many, like how big of a part of the tree it unlocks, it's pretty much nothing compared to a lot of the other trees. Yeah, you unlock like 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7 talents.
It's just a yellow line
yeah.
from Brain Freeze to Lonely Winter, and from Arctic Piercing to Focused Frost solves a lot of problems.
Yeah, definitely.
That's a very easy fix. They've done pathing like that all the time. How about for pure? You're a Mythic Plus dungeon gamer. What does your pure AoE build look like without changing too much? We'll go down we'll keep everything at the top. I'm assuming you're still maybe not taking Arctic Piercing, but you're taking most of this stuff here, right? I mean, there's no way you're not taking like Shatter, Fingers of Frost, right?
Yeah. You definitely want to take the Improved Blizzard, which is kind of annoying because that is a baseline spell that you don't have to do anything, and then now you... Well, I guess the other note is not really that useful for AoE. I really like the Cone of Cold talent. It really depends on like how it's tuned, but I want to play with it, so I want it to be good.
This is my high point of the entire mage class tree. I think Snowstorm is the coolest addition that any mage got. That's like, it makes Frost Mage AoE much cooler. The fact that it's also like thematic, because like Cone of Cold is like a frosty ability, but making Cone of Cold own is good.
Yeah, if you've ever logged into Classic WoW and pressed Cone of Cold, you're like, oh, this spell can actually do something. It's actually a big damage spell. Basically, this talent is like a different version of a previous legendary where it was like your, essentially like your Blizzard increase the damage of, what was it? Frozen Orb? No, it was Blizzarded damage increase. I like the idea of being able to basically store AoE damage for like fights where a bunch of ads come out at a certain time and then you can just unleash damage. So the tuning's just kind of off on it, but it seems like a cool idea.
What are you taking to fill out? Are you playing Pet?
Probably. If the Cone of Cold does a lot of damage and you want to be shattering it, and Pet is the easiest way to do that.
Okay. And then how?
I'm not entirely sold on it, but Lonely Winter is just single target spell. So if there's definitely like a target count at which you definitely want the Pet.
Okay, I think there's something else interesting to talk about here too. Is like when you're trying to route down to become an AoE lord, none of these buttons here feel like they're really helping you do that, and you have 5 more points to spend before you can even get to the capstone level stuff. So
Comet Storm does a lot of AoE.
So you're routing down to Comet Storm.
Grab Comet Storm, yeah.
Right now, let's probably do Perpetual Winter, probably because this thing is a 2-point node, and also we don't know what it is. So
I think it's also decent because you will be taking the talent under it. What's it called?
Fractured Frost?
Assault. Yeah, and because you don't have to cast Frostbolts to cast at least some flurries, because it's now a charge cooldown. You can still get some AoE from this talent even when you don't cast Frostbolt at all, which is probably better than nothing.
Cool. Where are you spending the last 2 points?
The last 2 points, I would probably grab Bone Chilling, I guess. So you need to take Arctic Piercing, even though it doesn't really do anything. Then
Yeah, that feels bad.
Bone Chilling.
And then now you have all this unlocked. So I'm assuming Comet Storm.
Comet Storm, Freezing Rain, and probably the rest into like Thermal Void, I guess.
You have 2 points remaining. So you
Yeah,
can't get
not
this choice
sure
node, but you could
exactly.
grab... Yeah, it's not...
So the biggest feels badman right now is Splitting Ice is out of reach.
Yeah, Splitting Ice is just super badly positioned in a tree. It's like one of your... Like, Frost Mages are supposed to be good at 2-target cleave, and the Splitting Ice node is so far out in the tree that it makes it impossible to grab in a lot of scenarios, which is really feels bad.
If it was more accessible too, it'd make it so you could get the second charge of Flurry with like the raid build, and that would feel really, really good. Skipping out on that feels bad. And I think with this one right now, you can get the bottom capstone if you get rid of the Empowered Icy Veins bottom one, which you probably want to
Oh
do.
yeah, I don't know
right.
why I did that.
Yeah,
I
I
just
didn't
like
notice that.
slammed it. Yeah, no, you can get the...
Yeah, Freezing Winds. Yeah, that's probably what... Something
looks
like
pretty good.
this is what I would run.
This actually looks... I mean, this doesn't look bad to play at all. Like this just sounds like a fun Frostmage build.
There's also something that I wanted to mention. You mentioned one of the talents is like a pure PvP. It's the one under Bone Chilling.
Oh, by the way, I would retract what I just said. I forgot you didn't have Splitting Ice. That's bad.
I mean, not necessarily. Depends on how much AoE are you doing. Like if you're fighting, I don't know, 10 targets, Splitting Ice isn't gonna doing a lot of extra damage, right? Because most of your damage is gonna be
Yeah, but
Cone
like
of
any
Cold.
time you're AoEing, there's always like 3
Yeah,
to
sure,
5
sure.
stuff all the time.
Yeah, I mean that's the issue we mentioned earlier. Just Splitting Ice in a bad position.
You could choose
Um,
Comet Storm. You could choose Splitting Ice just directly over Power Storm, right? It's the exact same.
Yeah, yeah. This really depends on like how many targets you plan to fight. If there's gonna be a lot of cleave, you just drop the Comet Storm stuff and you pick Splitting Ice.
Quick question now that we've seen the AoE and single target versions of these classes. So Snowstorm is something different, but if you were to compare this on how Frost AoE works right now with the Icy Propulsion working on Frozen Orb and everything, does this feel the same, better, or worse than current Frost Mage?
Well, I think it feels worse because I'm super used to just having Icy Veins all the time. But I think it's just a matter of like getting used to. So I think I'll probably Mage, and with the Cone of Cold, it's just going to be nicer overall.
Okay, so moving around some points, or making some more things baseline, or baked in, removing total points, and just giving you more options. Because like no class should have to feel like they're a worse version of their previous selves when more than half the class is actually currently specs. Sorry, more than half the specs are what they are now, but better. So any class that isn't that just needs work, and they've been working on it. But yeah, this is obviously the first week that Mage is out, so hopefully they're pretty vocal with the changes.
Yeah,
they're gonna make.
there's also a cool interaction that I wanted to mention. If you take a look at the talent between Bone Chilling and Splitting Ice, it seems like a pure PvP talent, right? It's the other one, the one.
Oh, this one,
right
yeah,
under
yeah,
it. Yeah. Because you can have Frostbite, you can pick Frostbite, which will presumably work in Mythic Plus. There's like a decent amount of shatter opportunities where your Blizzard and Frozen Orb will just naturally freeze the targets, and then your spells deal 20% more damage. I'm not sure if it's gonna be good, but it's an interesting interaction.
You have a lot of routes you can use in dungeons to just spam through, like just Frost Nova, Nice Nova. Could get some good value from that.
Someone in chat asked, should your 10.0 class feel stronger than your 9.2.5 class? I think the answer to that is just definitely yes, right? Like, because some classes are absolutely that. So seeing other classes be everything they are now with more, not necessarily stronger. It's not strong. It's like gameplay. Like, do you want their gameplay to have the options they have now plus more stuff? The answer to that is yes, for sure.
Yes.
Yep.
Like, it's not power. Power level is not the important thing. Any more Frost takes before we move on, actually?
I think I had one. Let me see, I have some notes here. I'm just gonna check if we talked about everything.
We haven't talked about Ray of Frost yet. That one's a big one.
You can talk about Ray of Frost while I check this thing.
All right. Well, it hasn't been used for a long while, but the note to the bottom right of it has a little bit of synergy. So when you cast Ray of Frost, not only are you getting 2 Fingers of Frost, but you're getting some added icicles. So maybe it's not completely terrible.
Let's go.
Right. So I think we pretty much touched on everything that I wanted to touch on. The last thing I want to mention is that I'm really happy about the flurry change, that it's now a charge cooldown. I'm not entirely happy about the fact they made it 40-second cooldown, and it doesn't have any haste scaling. But I'm still like glad there is the second charge talent, and it works like that. Like hardcasting flurry was never something that you wanted to do, and it felt weird to just have a spell that is literally useless unless you have a proc.
Yeah, I played a little Frost Mage dungeons, and Flurry actually felt pretty good. Felt pretty mobile too in general. Just Frost Mage just feels good, at least from the last time I played it. But I haven't played it in this expansion. Last time I played it was the end of BFA a lot. All right, I think that's it for Young Frost. We're gonna move on to Fire Mage, probably the spec that's seen the most play in PvE over the course of the last 2 expansions. It's had a lot. It has some legendary powers brought back that are current and also just from Legion. Obviously has like one of the craziest cooldowns in the game with like a bunch of reduction. Has a very weird capstone. Look, it just looks weird. I actually didn't even path through a lot of this on my own because I was just waiting for you to do it. All right, so Mr. Fired Up, talk about Fire Mage in a raid and take me where you want to go.
Okay, so the first section, there are 0 choices. You pick up Pyroblast and then Fire Blast, which is a bit weird that you have to pick up because I believe it's baseline for the other specs.
Is it an enhanced version of it?
Yeah, it is an enhancement.
Oh, it's castable. Okay.
You also,
Yeah, or
if you
for
don't
some
drag
reason-
that one
Right.
from your talents, oh, are you gonna say the same thing? Yeah, if
Yeah.
you don't drag this from your talents onto your bar, you have the old one, and it shows with 3 charges, but it has a global cooldown on it and can't be casted while casting, which is a little confusing.
Yeah, a little alpha B-U-double-G.
Yeah. It's the same thing with the double invisibilities.
So
And
you're
then
grabbing... Good.
You get Hot Streak, making the Fire Blast crit, and then the Fireball crit stacking, and then you have 3 points left to spend. So let's say you're doing like a raid build, you go for a Scorch and then Searing Touch, this is a choice between Searing Touch or Fire Starter.
And
But
here's the first problem. Yeah,
Yep.
you're taking Flame Strike even in a scenario where you would never take Flame Strike. So that's just something to do with the pathing at the top of the tree. What I think they're going for here is actually Elemental Shaman has this exact same thing where even if you're going pure single target and you're not taking Echoes of Great Sundering, the exact same thing happens in your tree where if you, no matter what you take, you need one more point to go on and you have to take Earthquake. But Earthquake obviously is used in some single target situations with Echoes of Great Sundering, and Flame Strike is not, I believe, right?
Yeah.
So it's like the same thing with Ellie as Fire, except there's actually no integration to single target whatsoever.
I think there is like a pretty easy swap though that we can get into later to make it not feel bad. But for
Sure.
now, we have to pick Flame Strike, and then we get Combustion, which you just pick Cauterize, which is nice that you don't have to go out of your way to get
Yep.
it. And then a lot of these points are pretty mandatory that we have to get to the one to the right of Cauterize. Yeah, that's to make Fire Blast good, and then to the left, Critical Mass to give you the crit scaling. You take both of those for now, and then we can skip on Improved Scorch for now, but we will come back to it later. How many points are we?
You're at 14 points. You have 6 more to unlock the capstone level.
Okay, let's get the Blaster Master, bottom right of Combustion, and then under Combustion. This is a choice. I'm not too big of a fan of the Tempered Flames choice, but we can get into that later.
Okay.
So get the Combustion duration, and now is a pretty weird situation. We have 3 points we need to spend. I'm gonna go through Firemind here instead of Phoenix Flames, so we're not taking Phoenix Flames, and we need one more point, and that's gonna go into Improved Scorch for now, top left. And so this talent is just making execute. It's an execute talent. Your execute stronger. And from Firemind, now we have the capstones unlocked. We're going for Sunking's Blessing, and we have to take Phoenix Reborn without taking Phoenix Flames.
Okay. And then Control Destruction.
Yeah, and then Sunking's Blessing.
Is Control Destruction new?
It might have been in the game before, I don't remember, but it's definitely not
The
something
effect
we've
is
had.
new.
But yeah, that's it's good. And then the point to the right of it, can we look at that real quick? This thing, not only is it bad, it feels awful to play with. It's just, I don't know how it ended up there. It's just not the greatest. And so from here we have 2 capstones left. I want to go for that one. So if you look at the notes before the combustion thing, you have Tinder, which I think the idea with Tinder is they want you to play it with tempered flames. It's really weird to see that here. But yeah, we're not gonna go for that. We're gonna get the wildfire, which is just the pure ignite damage.
Oh, that's the casting. Yeah, okay, got it.
I think their idea with tempered flames is they want you to use pyroblast as like your filler, and then when you get your Tinder buff, you use a fireball. It's really weird though. And then
Okay.
from wildfire, the node below, you could choose kindling or fire rush, which is the current 4-piece. Probably gonna depend on the situation on which one you take here. For now, let's just pick fire rush, and then this node is easily swappable depending on the situation. And we should have like 4 points left or 5 here.
You have 3 points left,
Oh,
actually.
okay, never mind. Yeah.
One quick note on wildfire. I feel like this is important to say. So, if it works the way the tooltip describes, it won't actually give us a bonus except for the ignite bonus there. Like you get the party bonus, but since it's critical strike, that's not actually going to affect your crit scaling the mastery during combustion. So it effectively that part of it does nothing for you.
Wait, why is it noted there then?
No, I'm
Like, is
saying
it-
that because it's critical strike rating on that
Yeah,
isn't gonna go into mastery. So they just made it wrong essentially. Like it just
Yeah, I
needs
know.
to be
I
something
know you have
else.
100% crit and combustion, but then you have combustion grants mastery equal to 50% of your crit. But
Right,
you
but
are
this-
It grants 50% of your crit stat, like your crit rating, not
Yeah,
of your
yeah.
crit percent.
Right.
And the
Oh.
wildfire gives crit percent.
I see. It's percent, not rating. That's what I get.
Yeah.
Okay. Yeah. That's that's not good. So quick little look at that. You could also just change that to any other stat, and it's also fine, right? And it will like mastery or haste or something, and it would just make a lot more sense, and it would be the same buff to party members. I will say that wildfire is actually probably pretty decent, giving a 2% crit buff in a party that has 4 other people popping 2 minutes at the same time. If you're playing something like Fiery Rush, I think that's like actually pretty good. If you
It's
if you were
not
to line
party
it up.
based, it's I think distance based.
That's a little bit actually that's with how many party I was actually going to say I think that's worse. I actually don't know if that's true because there's so many party
base things in this expansion that you probably would want to buff like a certain pack of people, even though the movement can be kind of annoying for that. That's fine. All right, where are you going with these last 3 points in a row?
The Master of Flame and Pyroclasm. The Master of Flame, we can talk about it. It's kind of interesting because the Ignite deals more damage while it's not active, is kind of like anti how fire has worked. Like you do all your damage in combustion, so this is while it's not active. So when your combustion finishes, it'll do more damage. And I guess there also maybe could be a situation where canceling combustion to make this rolling would be a thing, but I doubt that. That's the main benefit is that it just spreads to more targets, which it's at 4 baseline, and it feels a bit weird because where is this like gonna see play? Because an M+, if there's a lot of targets, you're probably just gonna be flame striking instead. In raid, if there's ever more than 4 targets, I guess, then this could get value, but it seems pretty like most of the value is just to get to the talents right by it, which is Pyroclasm underneath, which we have right now. It's good for a single target.
Okay, and then we have 1 more point total.
Yeah, so at this point you can either put it to the point right of Pyroclasm or into Improved Scorch, depending on if Execute is important. Let's say for most raid fights you do want the Improved Scorch for bigger Execute, or you could go Fevered Incantation for probably more overall damage.
Is there any like fights where you would like change this build based on the fight, or is this like you think like almost certainly like every single raid fight there's just no choice, this is what you're bringing? Like Kindling is an obvious choice node.
That's a choice. It feels pretty locked in though. Like you could argue for like taking Phoenix Flames, which feels really bad to not take, but you can just like Scorch instead. And if you look at the choice node below Phoenix Flames, Alexstrasza's Fury, that's nice that it lets Phoenix Flames always crit now, which has been something we've been asking for back since Legion when it went away. I think you would maybe take Phoenix Flames if, well, I believe Alexstrasza's Fury right now, it says after you like Dragon's Breath, your next Pyroblast or Flame Strike deals more damage, right? I think that's a thing. And
Yeah,
if they brought that and then made it so like it's only with Phoenix Flames or something, because you can make a Fire Tree and not even have Dragon's Breath with Alexstrasza's Fury, so if instead the Alexstrasza's Fury was the same as it is right now, but instead of for Dragon's Breath, it was for Phoenix Flames, where it would guarantee the crit and make it so your next Pyroblast or Flame Strike did more damage, then I think you would take Phoenix Flames here, which would feel good. But
Okay.
It's really weird that you're just taking, like, if you read Firemind, this is the decision. It's either Phoenix Flames or that is what we're taking, and that's just probably going to be better.
Well, not to mention that if you're taking Firemind versus Phoenix Flames, you're also losing a point somewhere else from pathing to the bottom, right? Or no, I guess no, it's the same. You wouldn't be able to take this choice node.
Well, also, currently you're taking Phoenix Reborn without taking Phoenix Flames as well, which feels a bit odd. The suggestion I was talking about earlier was kind of putting Phoenix Flames where Flame Strike is, and then it wouldn't feel bad to pick it, because like in a single target situation, you're picking it and never really using it. And like for basically every raid fight, as fire, you don't really want to plus Flame Strike, because it's just not as efficient as what other classes do.
And where would you suggest to put Flame Strike if you put Phoenix Flames in the top right? It would have to still be on the right side of this like AoE shit, right?
Yeah, it could be on the right. And also we haven't talked about the talent bottom left of Phoenix Flames, but that just gives it one more charge, and that feels like there's never a world you're taking that right now, which feels pretty bad.
So I think a really good place for Flame Strike would actually be where Conflagration is currently. That's underneath Improved Flame Strike. So maybe just swap, like put Phoenix Flames where Flame Strike is, put Flame Strike where Improved Flame Strike is, and then you could probably just delete Conflagration because that talent is boring, does nothing.
Or very simply, since you guys don't have like a ton of choice, just bake Flame Strike and Improve Flame Strike together, and then just put it one node below Phoenix Flames and put Phoenix Flames here. But yeah, but you'd have to, it's kind of weird because at that point you'd have to figure out where to put the like Phoenix Flames nodes. This one you said you'd never take, so it's irrelevant where it is. But the Alexstrasza's Fury and From the Ashes talent you'd probably want under, which would give you more points at the top, which is kind of weird. But yeah, any more Fire Mage takes other than? Oh, actually no, let's not do that. Let's actually just talk about what you'd play in a Mythic Plus dungeon. Actually, I think this will be interesting.
Okay, so get your same nodes that you did before, and then bottom area you don't want the Scorch Execute, you can just get the Critical Mass.
Oh, right here, got it.
Yeah, and then you get your Cauterize, you get your Combust, And so you get your Flame on under Fire Blast. You get to the right of
Flame on,
Cutters.
sorry. Yeah,
and
I'm
then
losing it.
you'd get Flame Patch. The choice node below Flame Patch, they brought back Molten Skyfall, which is a legendary they've had twice that you've never really used. And Incendiary Eruptions, this is new, which is pretty cool. It has an ICD, I think it's 6 seconds.
Yeah, that's right.
And it just pops a little Living Bomb, which is pretty cool. So you have Living Bomb that you can take as well, which you're just going to have a bunch of Living Bombs. I don't think you need to take it right now, but let's see. How many points are we at?
Right now, 17 out of 30. 3 more to go on.
Let's just take Living Bomb, and then you could either go for Fire Mind or for Blaster Master here, depending on what capstones you'll want. I have a feeling you'll probably want Sunking's Blessing and then probably Kindling. I could see Fire Frenzy, which is the bottom right one, but I have a feeling it's just numerically not there. The one we haven't selected yet on the far right.
Fire doesn't have like a single capstone that would be like some new like cool AoE. When would you ever play this?
That's what this is. So
Yeah.
the Firestorm legendary that we had, it was only the best legendary for like a couple days until they fixed Fevered Incantation. That's this one where you proc and you just get instant cast Flame Strikes or Pyroblast and they always crit.
Yeah, you just have to lose the other two, one of the other two nodes, which would feel pretty bad, but
Yeah.
I'm not sure what would actually be better. I have a feeling that the other two are just going to be a bit more consistent. So you would take Wildfire and then probably Kindling for dungeons, and then you would go down the left and get Sun King's Blessing again.
Wow. So the only real difference here is in single target and AoE. Wait, where are these last 3 points going? Actually, before we do anything
Probably
else?
Blaster Master, and then let's see.
So you could go improve Flame Strike, but that's going to be if you're hard casting Flame Strike. The other bonus is that the radius is quite a bit larger, but I'm not sure if it's worth taking, honestly, for the other points.
Yeah, it's like more so damage outside of where your main damage is. It feels really bad to not have it for outside of your AoE because you're just hard casting Flame Strike and it takes a really long time. What I had, I think, was actually I did take Phoenix Flames and I got rid of Firemind, and then I got Alexstrasza's Fury because Phoenix Flames does do a bit of, like, not a terrible amount of AoE.
Yeah, also you cast Dragon's Breath a lot in Mythic Plus, and that's going to make it give you Hot Streak, or give you a Heating Up, right? It contributes to Hot Streak, and it's going to crit, so that's kind of nice.
Big question then before we talk about the rest of Mage. So same question as Frost. With the combination of the class and spec tree, does Fire Mage in Raid and Mythic Plus separately feel as good, better, or worse than it does currently on Live?
It's very similar, with like the only change in AoE being the Incendiary Eruptions, Living Bomb stuff. You can take Living Bomb and Flame Patch, but for like the single target build, which there's like very little you can change about it, it's actually worse because you don't have Phoenix Flames. And well, I guess you have the improved Scorch too, so you'll do more Execute.
That and also Control Destruction as well, so...
Yeah, yeah.
And
But it's like gameplay wise, it's not any improvement.
And yeah, greater invisibility. You gain defensives, right? And you gain more execute, which is kind of the stuff that you want, I guess, as Fire. So that's probably a win overall.
See, here's the thing of like what's happened the last few years. Like we actually, a bunch of people in chat talked about this, and I don't think I was clear earlier, but like people are like, do you want your class to be better or worse than it is now? What's happened the last 2 expansions is your class starts out with nothing and then gets stronger and stronger and stronger over the course of the expansion because of borrowed power systems, then it all goes away. You start the new expansion, your character feels like ass after it loses corruption and like everything else like that. And then you just, and all of the Legion stuff, right? The beginning of BFA and the beginning of Shadowlands were just like, okay, my character is just so much worse than it was yesterday, right? The point of this is with these evergreen systems and with us not getting a bunch of borrowed power every patch, that's the point of Dragonflight, you should hope to keep your class as fun and with as much interaction as you had with these borrowed power systems in full swing, so you're removing the shitty situation of losing all this stuff and feeling like you have nothing at the beginning of a patch or at the beginning of an expansion, right? And with this continuing on, you don't want it to be way less than what it is without it, because then it's just boring, right? Like every single class should have access to the same stuff they have now with current talent builds, but there's a reason they're making a new system. You should be able to do things you haven't before, cool new talents, cool new decisions with all the stuff you have now, because some classes are getting that, and your class is going to feel like shit if it doesn't get that, right? So I think it seems like Fire is going to, if it's going to play like it is fully borrowed powered out at the end of this expansion, then
I feel like that's good. They'll still be really strong. Obviously, tuning is its own thing, but I think the fact that they gain greater invis, keep their cheat death, still have ice block, it's just like mainly I think like the best thing with, I guess maybe the situation with fire is that there isn't a lot of choice in your actual spec tree, but there's not a lot of classes that have a lot of choice in the spec tree specifically. Usually that's the class tree. At least it's like single target and AoE basically, and like maybe some cleave choices.
Yeah, I think my biggest issue currently with how it is, and like me personally, I don't mind it, but I think that a lot of other players probably will, is you can't really escape hard casting Pyroblasts as like a single target build, because you're gonna probably want Pyroclasm, you're gonna probably want Sun King's Blessing, and you know there is like that weird meme talent that we were kind of talking about. We haven't really discussed, but you know at least you also have Ice Flows, right? So that's gonna help a lot for hard casting Pyroblast, but still just not a fan of like not having, I guess, a divergent playstyle there.
Yeah, I think the meme talent, which is the one, what's it called?
The combustion choice now.
You can,
Temper
the
Flames?
combustion choice, the
Oh.
Temper Flames. I think it was probably meant to work with like Sun King's Blessing because I think like the 50% reduced duration just won't apply to Sun King's Blessing, and so you're just meant to be using the Sun King's Blessing Pyroclasm to make your hard casts a bit nicer. I don't think you're meant to like spam Pyroblast as your filler, but who knows, maybe. I'm not sure if that's like ideal with like losing combustion duration, like the 50% conversion from your crit to master is a fairly big deal, but you could build fire where you don't have a lot of crit rating and you have like, for example, a lot of haste, and then a combustion duration doesn't do a lot. So maybe that's an option. I don't know.
What would you all like to see changed other than the position of Flame Strike and Phoenix Flames?
I think both of the talents leading into Kindling and Fiery Rush are kind of not great, not really interesting, and them being like capstones feels especially bad. I think the Fire Tree is like pretty solid overall. Would also
Okay.
like to see Kindling move somewhere else because I just don't really, I mean like there definitely are situations where you might pick it, but having it compete with Fiery Rush there, moving Kindling somewhere else would be a lot more interesting. I think a lot of players like Kindling, and you know cooldown reduction is something that mages are kind of known for, so I would like to see that talent maybe broken off of that choice, maybe something
I
reorganized
mean,
there.
I mean, if you just look at the Frost Tree, for example, the Frost Tree like has a whole Icy Veins section where it's like, you know, there's multiple parts of it, reducing the cooldown of it and increasing the power of it, right? In the Fire Tree, it's like you have to pick one or the other. Where, yeah, I guess you're saying a way you could mix up how combustion has been in the past is you can just be way more. You can have, you know, Kindling with Fiery Rush, for example.
Yeah, what you could do is you could split it up so that both Kindling and Fire Rush are 2 new capstones. Then you also have an option for like playing without the hardcast talents. You would pick both Fire Rush and Kindling, and you wouldn't have to play with Sun King's Blessing or Pyroclasm. That's
Yeah.
maybe that's a nice option.
Yeah, that sounds good.
Yeah, that sounds.
I
Really
also
nice.
feel like Pyromaniac being anywhere
has
near
no
the
business
tree
there.
is just an insult. That thing is
Yeah.
so bad, and not even like they could give it to you for free and it would feel bad. It's not even fun to play with.
Okay. So I guess mages also, if you want to talk about niches, so fire is known as like the CDR, like they have like really common cooldowns. They have a really strong cooldown. What they were known for in BFA was also their crazy cleave they did around the target. That's been nerfed a lot towards like a single target. It looks like you guys are going to have a little bit more execute viability in the expansion.
Yeah, execute is gonna be stronger, and like ignite gameplay is gonna be more prevalent because of just how it spreads is a lot more convenient. We haven't talked about it, but it spreads through Fire Blast instead of Phoenix Flames now, which is a great quality of life. And also Blaster Master instead of Infernal Cascade will make ignite more relevant and like less bursty, I guess. You'll have more consistent damage because Blaster Master gives you mastery instead of just increased fire damage, and it doesn't require combustion either.
Yeah, that's a big part. It's also moving up to 3 stacks, and the duration is shorter, so it definitely is a lot harder to keep up. Especially if you're talenting in the Phoenix Flames, it becomes quite troublesome to try and keep that Blaster Master stack up. But I mean, that talent's going to be good, right? So I'm pretty sure we're going to want that, unless we're just doing like an AoE build.
Okay. Fire Mage complete.
I guess another thing, like the talent that's very clearly a PvP talent, I feel like it would make sense if that was a PvP talent and something else was there instead. It's just a PvP talent.
Yeah, it's actually the only thing on the entire tree that you could ever say would only ever affect one spec or one version of the game. Even in the Frost Tree, right? When we were talking about that, like there's a scenario where you could take Frigid Shattering, right?
Yeah, absolutely. There's even situations where you can like shatter as the other 2 specs on the general tree.
Yep.
But with the Blazing Barrier thing, I guess like you're questing your level 65, you're killing a rare, you could deal some big damage with your barrier or something.
It's also hilarious that it's across from Flame On, and they both are like the one that leads in the Flame Patch, because Flame On is like our best talent, and then you have one that's pretty much useless across from it in those situations.
Yeah. Also, Raikou in my stream just said improved Blazing Berries a PvP talent ? Who the fuck would play that? So they don't even play it either. So like,
just fluff.
Yeah, it's just ass. Yeah, it just doesn't. It should never exist. Yeah. So replace that with something that is more competitive on the row with Flame On, or have it be AOE oriented. Right. It seems like it's a little bit on the AOE path. So have something good there. All right, moving on to Arcane though. This is the one that Preheat will be leading. Obviously, everyone feel free to comment whenever. This is the one I've seen the most takes about. So I think actually like just now recapping from where we are, like I'm pretty sure the Frost Tree deeply problematic, right? A lot of stuff there. The general class tree, a lot of issues. The Fire Tree seemed to have way less issues than both of those.
It definitely seems like the most swell off of the 3 currently.
Yeah. All right, so let's see where Arcane's at.
Oh boy, you're in for a treat. Okay, so obviously we pick Barrage. We're going to want Arcane Missiles. This is going to be like a single target build. We're going to want to pick up Clear Casting and also Rule of Threes. Obviously we want Arcane Surge as well. And then we're definitely going to want to pick up stuff that basically buffs Radiant Spark, Arcane Harmony. So that's going to be Impetus, just so that we can get to other stuff, right? And then we're also going to want improved Arcane Missiles.
Sure.
So
before we go on, let's talk about the new Arcane CD. So they basically made Arcane Power into a big, like, giant mana dump, big AoE thing. Have you guys played with that at all? How does that feel?
Yes. So first and foremost, I want to mention that this spell is what activates Rune of Power, right? So it's pretty important for that reason, but it does not benefit from Rune of Power currently. So I just want to point that out because it is a bug. I put feedback on it, but it seems like it probably should, right? Since it's the one that activates it. Essentially, the idea with this spell is it's a 1.5 minute cooldown. You do like this 2.5 second long cast. It uses up all of your mana, and it does this huge AoE that's going to hit 5 targets. It deals less damage beyond 5 targets. And then afterwards, you're going to get a buff that's like a pretty significant mana regeneration and spell damage buff. So it's, you know, it's kind of a fun take on Arcane Power. If they want it to be like a cast or like a GCD, I feel like this is an interesting way to kind of go about it. So overall, I'm a fan of this talent, but I do think that there are some issues, obviously, the Rune of Power thing. And then in PvP, you can just spell steal this or dispel the buff, and then the mage is just stuck at 0 mana, which is kind of funny.
Something to note as well is it does benefit from like its own damage ramp. So that's cool.
Yeah, unfortunately not Rune of Power though. But okay, so this unlocks the rest of the tree. So I think number 1 is going to be improved Arcane Barrage. I think this is pretty much a ringer for us in most like raid settings. This is where it gets a little weird because we have some options, but I'm going to say that you probably want Mana Adept, which is the other one that looks like Barrage over there on the right.
Oh, sure. Okay.
Yeah, and then we're going to go ahead and also pick up Amplification as well. That's on the far right, and that's going to give us more Arcane Missiles whenever we clear cast. Sure. So the entire idea with this build is basically you missile a lot, right? Because you want to build up stacks. So we're going to make a beeline for that capstone real quick. Go to Improve Clear Casting, and then we're going to go ahead and also pick up Arcane Power, which is directly underneath Arcane Surge.
Why the fuck why is there an Arcane Explosion node leading to the capstone?
Yeah, he got lost.
Oh, never mind. No, yeah.
No, I know what you're saying. So this is kind of a topic I'm going to talk about in just a little bit, but all of the AoE talents on this tree are just like literally at the furthest points they could be from each other. Like they're around the brim, they're at the bottom, and then Reverberate for some reason is just like all the way on the far right.
Also, what the fuck is Mana Gem?
Oh, okay. Okay, so this Mana Gem is... Let's talk about why this makes absolutely no sense. Mana Gem is on the same row as Evocate. Evocate gives you 100% mana, right? And then with the talent Siphon Storm below it, it also gives 12% Intellect. Whereas Mana Gem, if you fill out both of it, it's going to give you 10% mana, right? And it's going to give you 5% spell power. So these are basically doing the same thing, only one is just strictly worse. And they have the same cooldown. They're both a 2-minute cooldown, unless you like talent into Evocate. I don't know why this talent is here. If anything, this is kind of a giveaway that they weren't really sure what they were doing here, because Mana Gem, I think even if this had like a 30-second cooldown, and didn't have 3 charges, I don't think you would pick it still. Like, it's that bad. It's like a button that you can literally go a whole raid without pressing right now. And granted, you wouldn't have the 5% spell damage, but it's just like so incredibly bad. If you ever see a mage talent into this, it's a dead giveaway. They have no idea what they're doing, basically.
Okay, I think one other thing to point out too is that it could be like a different spot in the tree. Like right now, it's like one thing is that yes, it is a capstone. It's in the capstone level, but it is also like 1 point, right? Or 2 points. Instead of like a full ass thing, you have to like invest a whole bunch of things into. So that is a scenario where you could have something that has less power in general. And it's just the fact that Evocate has so much more power in the same spot. So this could just be a placement thing or baking it in or a few of those things. But yeah. Okay, let's continue with the tree.
Yeah, so we want to make our way down to Arcane Harmony. That's going to be the goal. That's the capstone on the far right. We're also going to want to pick up Harmonic Echo and Radiant Spark, so we have to make our way there. First, I would do Resonance. That's below the Mana Adept one. Yeah, that's like damage in single target. It's also more funnel, so Arcane actually still has funnel, which is great. And then, obviously, we want Touch of the Magi as well. That's just a huge talent, right? Sure. Now, we have some options here, but I think
Touch
it's probably
is
more
changed,
likely...
if you want to go into that too, from last
What's
expansion. The touch changes from last expansion to this one, if you want to go into that.
Yeah, so I mean, Touch is going to be basically the spell that accumulates damage. It's up for 10 seconds, which is nice. We have that window there, and then it's going to explode for the damage.
It got increased duration, right?
Yeah, so... Oh, go ahead, fire it up.
I was just going to say, yeah, all that, but you could go ahead.
Yeah, so that will kind of be important later on because we're going to talk about maybe some variations for Touch. But yeah, it is nice that it's instant cast. It's also nice that it lasts a good amount of time. You want to basically fit all your spells in it, and your spells have to land with Touch of the Magi up. And Arcane Brush has a really long travel time, so it's nice that it has this duration here. But so yeah, things get a little weird here. But
well,
we're going to go
it's also nice
ahead.
that it has a large travel time because you could press Arcane Barrage before Touch of the Magi. And you could put Touch of the Magi up now because it's an instant cast and have it affect it before Arcane Barrage hits as well, right?
Yeah, and keep the idea in
really
mind.
Want to do that though.
Well,
okay.
We'll talk about a use case for like where you would do something kind of similar. But okay, so I think the next talent that we want, it's a pretty big DPS one, is probably Enlightened. But in order to get there, we're gonna have to pick Prismatic Barrier, which is fine. I mean, it's just like more magic reduction.
Where is that?
It's a little bit above.
Oh,
yeah, there
this.
you go.
Okay,
yeah.
This is interesting. I want to look at the rest of this row real quick before I move on, because you're taking a... Oh, this is a 5% passive DR, right? Not passive.
While
but...
barriers up, yeah.
I don't know about that node, but let's continue. That's fine.
Yeah, and then I think we're also probably going to want Slipstream. That seems like a pretty good talent to pick.
What about Arcane Power?
Oh, yeah, we should definitely have that slot already. Go ahead and slot that, yeah.
Yeah. Okay, and then where's Slipstream?
It's below Nether Precision, so go ahead and slot in Nether Precision there.
Okay.
And then Slipstream, I'm kind of going like order of DPS to like more just coziness, right? Slipstream's super cozy talent. Another cozy talent's going to be Presence of Mind on the far left.
All right, and now you have unlocked the capstones.
That's right, yeah. So from here on out, it's pretty straightforward. There's kind of one, I guess 2 big options, but we're going to want to go to Arcane Harmony, so fill out Illuminated Thoughts. That's going to be on the far right.
Okay.
And then, so yeah, you have more chance to basically clear cast. You've got Arcane Blast as a chance to expand. It gives you a buff where you don't use clear casting. So essentially, you can think of this as like another clear casting, right? And then Arcane Harmony is changed from what it is on live. It's the legendary right now, and it does like 144% at max stacks. They up the amount of stacks and they reduce the damage. So this is going to do basically like 100% increased damage on your Arcane Barrage if you fully charge it up. Okay, so that's one piece of the puzzle. The next piece we need is Radiant Spark. So we're going to want to get there. This is where it gets a little weird, right? So I'm going to say Arcane Bombardment for now. And I should mention this tooltip is wrong in-game and in this talent calculator. It should actually be when the target is below 35% health. So it's execute, basically.
Sure.
So pretty decent execute there. And then Radiant Spark and Harmonic Echo. Very good talents there.
And then now with 2 points left, it looks like they've clearly designed all of the capstones to where in Arcane, they want you to get 2 capstones, then they want you to pick either Mana Gem or Evocate, right?
Yeah, so here's where things get really weird. I think that mana, like your mana return right, it's probably not going to be an issue as long as we get one of the following, but we're going to either need Evocation or we're going to need Arcane Orb. So if we go Evocation, I feel like this is probably the better version. You can also pick up Siphon Storm, which is basically a buff. Whenever you channel Evocate, it stacks up to 12% on your intellect, so that's pretty good. And then basically we're done, but I want to point out something. We don't have Orb, and that feels awful. Like losing Orb again because we just got it back in Shelllands. It's going to make the playstyle feel really, really bad. Anytime there's like AoE to happening, or anytime you're just like at 0 arcane charges, you typically drop your arcane charges around every 20 seconds or so. So the cooldown of orb being 20-second recharge is like perfect for that, right? But unfortunately, if we want orb, we're going to have to spec out of Siphon Storm and Evocation. We're going to have to get rid of Harmonic Echo, that's probably the biggest hit. And then we keep Radiant Spark, and then we can at least route down to orb.
So you want to get rid of Evocation and grab
Yeah.
Prodigious Savant, and then grab Arcane Orb without the capstone, which just gives you an extra charge, or you get a free orb for missiles. Okay.
This capstone's weird, right? Because we have like extra charge, which is probably bad, and then we also have our Orb Barrage, which is Arcane Missiles 15. You basically have to cast it like 8 times to get this to proc, right? They have a better version of this legendary, and the technology already exists. It's called Mantle of the First Kirin Tor. That was the Legion Legendary Shoulders for Arcane Mage. Just like vastly better design and all around better, but for some reason we have Orb Barrage. Not really sure why. Basically, they're like reinventing the wheel here, and I don't really think it makes much sense, right? Because this is like the AoE talent you would expect, right? But you get it from casting a bunch of missiles. Like that's a lot of missiles to have to cast an AoE to get that, because it's not like per missile hit. It's like, you know.
Oh, it's not per dude. I was looking at that. Okay, it said clearcast arcane missiles counts as 2. So I was imagining like, oh, so you just like rip a clearcast arcane missiles and you just get one.
I wish,
but
man.
No, it's not hits. It's actual casts of. Okay, that's brutal.
Yeah, while we are here, I think like having charge orb as the capstone is just super bad. Doesn't make any sense. Like if you are in a, let's say, raid situation, the additional charge will basically never matter because you will always keep the cooldown rolling, so it doesn't really do a lot of damage. It might be situational in like Mythic Plus where you have some time between packs for it to gain the extra charge, but it just feels so bad as a capstone.
Yeah, I really think orb needs to be higher up on the tree. Playing without orb just feels really bad. I don't think it's necessarily going to like make or break it not having orb, but it does kind of cause some issues because you still have to get your arcane charges to 4. There are some ways to do that, obviously, right? But you're not going to have Touch of the Magi up every time. You're not going to have, Evocate with Siphon Storm up all the time. Presence of Mind will probably help a little bit, but once again, won't have it all the time, right? So Orb is just, I feel like Orb is just such a great talent, or such a great skill, and we shouldn't lose it. I feel like it should just be higher up.
There's some other stuff in here we can talk about. Maybe we should do AoE first before like actually mentioning things that we haven't actually talked about yet. But like Foresight, right? I think Foresight's cool. Right?
Yeah, I think it's neat. It's a neat idea. It's basically like, you could think of it as like an alternative to Slipstream, right? Or like you could take it with Slipstream as well. It's definitely a cool idea.
And there's like a ton of times in
to,
raids where
like,
you are
Presence of
standing.
Mind.
There's a ton of times where you're standing still for that long in raids, and then it just gives you that extra little bit. Kind of be weird to track. Like it'd be hard for people to get used to that. I think there's like not a lot of abilities that actually work like that. Just a random note though. All right, how are we building this? If you're a Mythic Plus blaster, or even like I don't know, there's scenarios where Arcane's AoE was really like we played Arcane for our Anduin kill, and the idea was just it wasn't as going to be as much overall damage on the fight as fire. Maybe it was just. Actually, it was like really close, I think.
It's pretty good overall damage.
Yeah, it's pretty good overall damage, but it was also just like, even if it wasn't, you would have still just had that class to execute the downstairs phase every single time, and to kill the second guy. Like that was valuable, and that's not something where like. So how much AoE do you still have in this single target build?
So first, I just want to say Arcane is really, really good for like 2 situations. One, if you want to have cooldowns every 45 seconds, because it does like pretty decent damage specifically. And then also funnel, right? Because Arcane has like massive funnel. At 5 targets, it's even more than Frost. Obviously, targets have to be close, but once again, Anduin, perfect situation for that, right? So let's talk about AoE. So. Sure. There's a lot that we have to kind of change.
We can start from the jump. That's fine.
So unfortunately, we're going to have to take Rule of Threes in order to take Arcane Familiar, which is that's just like, what is this doing?
Hold up.
Why is this talent here?
Hold up. Yeah.
I mean, I mean, buff surge damage a little bit, but like, this is just a bad talent.
It's not really a bad talent, it's just a boring talent. The issue with Arcane Familiar is that it was always competing with amplification, which you never want to drop. By itself, it's not a like bad talent.
Yeah, I just
it's
we're taking it so that we can get to Arcane Tempo.
The decision making, the line of thinking, like even within other trees of Mage, like
definitely. You're
going down the line of thinking, and it all kind of makes sense where you're going. That just seems like off on its own kind of thing. That's fine. Arcane Surge for sure. Clear casting, I'm assuming.
Yeah. So we have to take clear casting, and then obviously improved Arcane Explosion for AoE. And then, so this unlocks the next row. I think Arcane Tempo is probably something you would want in AoE. So the way this works, basically, it's you only get like 1 stack per barrage, right? So clearing your arcane charges gives you 1 stack. But I feel like in Mythic Plus, you'd definitely be able to keep this up. And it'd probably feel pretty good to use. I just don't like that you have to take Rule of Threes and Arcane Familiar to get to it. I feel like that's a little rough. And then obviously you're going to want improved Arcane Barrage. That's a, good AoE talent. Same with Resonance. In order to get to Resonance, we go into Mana Adept. And then below that is Resonance. It's on the left. Yep, that's the one. And then we have kind of a weird situation because, okay, so our goals from here on out is we want to get Orb, right? That's number 1. And then number 2, we also probably want to get Reverberate, which is like far on the right. That's like that one that I said was lost earlier. Yeah, so, I mean, if you just look at the AoE talents, right, we took Explosion in the middle, Arcane Tempo on the far left, Orb is at the bottom, and then Reverberates on the far right. We're literally trotting this entire map to get our AoE build, essentially. But yeah, in order to get that, we're going to have to take Amplification, which is Clearcast does Arcane Missiles. We aren't even really going to be using that for the most part, so kind of feels bad on that one. You have to take Impetus, by the way, to get to this. There's a lot of single target talents we have to take to get to AoE.
So you're taking Impetus, Amplification, Improve Clearcasting just to get to 1 AoE node.
Yeah, and I don't know if this is necessarily what you would do. I'm just saying that, like, if we wanted a quote-unquote AoE build as, like, based on how they designed this tree, that's something you would definitely want to pick up. And then from there, we're going to want Touch of the Magi. We're also, I mean, honestly, Enlighten's probably pretty good, but we'll hold off on that for now. Supernova is the one that's directly below Resonance. This is basically like another stop if it works right. And that's a big assumption because this does not work the way, it wouldn't interrupt casts in most cases, but it should, right? Like it's a knock-up. But that's like another AoE stop for Arcane, so go ahead and slot that one. And then we're probably going to want to go and start making our way to Arcane Orbs. So let's just go ahead and slot in, let's see.
This is cursed as fuck.
Yeah, because we want
Dude, you have one, if you want Arcane Orb, you have to grab Foresight or Palm.
Yeah, it's either Foresight or Palm. I mean, you could take extra talents to go Enlighten, but it's probably better to go with Palm.
Yeah, honestly. Palm. Okay, cool. Prodigious Savant, Arcane Orb, and then
Arcane Orb.
Probably
and honestly,
even...
I don't think you even want those talents below it. Like, I don't think either are really worth it.
That's a problem. They need to fix that. All right, cool. And then where are we going from here? We have 7 points to fill out your AoE build.
Yeah, so we're gonna go back down to Harmony. Harmony's probably gonna be worth taking in AoE as well, just because. Well, it gives us at least a reason to use Arcane Missiles. This could also tie into maybe Barrage if it's like tuned right, but I don't know if it will be. Mana is not going to be an issue for AoE, so we don't really care about Mana Gem. We don't really care about Evocation, right? And then this is where we can get a little creative. So, we have 3 points left over. We could go like Arcane Echo, maybe. Basically, it's like Prophecy of Fear from HFC, where whenever you have Touch of the Magi up, you can missile a bunch. And that explodes. By the way, side note on this one, this actually might be a good alternative to Arcane Bombardment in the single target build. And the way that you would change like how you play is you would want to Touch of the Magi basically at the last second. You would still want to get your Arcane Surge damage like in Touch of the Magi and Barrage damage, but you'd primarily be just like spamming missiles afterwards. And it actually does quite a bit of damage. I've seen pops on YouTube of Touch of the Magi, which like stores 25% of damage for like over 105k. So it's pretty good. But yeah, from here we've got like 1 point, right? If we wanted to go that route, I think probably Radiant Spark might be worth it. There's other stuff like maybe we go Orb Barrage, maybe
tell me about Nether Tempest.
Nether Tempest is something that unless they change the tuning on it significantly, it's just not something you would ever use. The only time like in recent history Nether Tempest has been useful was back in Emerald Nightmare whenever you used it as like an arcane build where all you used was Nether Tempest over and over and over again just to get clear casting for arcane missiles. So this is basically...
I like Nether Tempest as an ability. It's just like a criminally undertuned thing.
Yeah, it's also limited to one target. Nether Tempest used to be really great back in Mists of Pandaria when you could like multi-dot with it. Made Mage kind of like a multi-dotter. Absolutely insane on fights like Dark Animus, but it's limited to one target. The scaling's really, really bad. Maybe it could get some use if you like needed more mana in like a single target build and you wanted like a spell to just throw out that just bought you time essentially, right? But just not a good talent right now.
All right, so Arcane doesn't seem like you're going to be doing this for like an AoE thing. It looks like you're like going out of your way to make it an AoE spec, but it seems like it's just a spec that has AoE and cleave built in when you just play your normal single target build, and you're just going to always do that, and you're probably just not going to play this in dungeons.
Yeah,
that's what it seems like.
So here's what I'll say about that. Yeah, so Arcane Strengths, right, is, once again, 45-second cooldown, really, really good for certain fights, and then Priority Cleave, right? So in Mythic Plus, if you're just like blasting like AoE, obviously you change what you do in your rotation just a little bit, right? But the fact that Arcane Surge is going to hit 5 targets, the fact that your barrages are going to hit 5 targets, the fact that you've just got this huge giga damage, right, from Arcane Harmony, and Execute maybe from Arcane Bombardment, these are all fantastic. The main thing where it like kind of falls down is not having Orb in AoE. So I think probably in that case you would just play the one where we opted out of Harmonic Echo at the very bottom and then slotting in Arcane Orb there. It's going to feel really bad though because Harmonic Echo is also very good in Mythic Plus, especially like 5 targets. So that feels awful to not take it. But unfortunately, Prodigious Savant is 2 points, so we kind of have to go about it this way.
And for context, the point below Radiant Spark, I think on like Mythic Anduin is about 20% damage, if I remember correctly.
20% of your damage?
Yeah, but that could be. Let me check a log to make sure.
One was
Yeah,
it again?
okay, 16% on this one. The Harmonic Echo.
Yeah, it's huge. That's a
It's very
massive
good.
amount of damage you're missing out on. So that's why I was saying, like, honestly, you might even miss out on Arcane Orb for Mythic Plus. So that's
Yeah.
just like, what the hell, man? They gotta move Orb.
It
I've
seems like
been saying it.
Yeah, like honestly, I think like outside of Orb, this tree doesn't seem that bad. Like Reverberate's like out of the way, but like honestly, like when are you doing that? Like when are you going and grabbing Reverberate? I can't speak for other things, but like just grabbing Radiant Spark, grabbing Arcane Harmony, spending the next 2 points on like Evocate most likely, and just having Arcane Orb somewhere up here. I feel like that's good, right? Like
Yeah, I think they're close. I think they're close. The main thing is like Mana Gem, it makes no sense even having this on the tree, especially where it's at. Obviously move Orb, right? And then maybe the AoE stuff could be moved around a bit. But honestly, like there's at least like a functioning build with this. It seems like it'd probably feel good, aside from obviously the Orb issue.
Yeah, I think Arcane also needs like a decent third capstone. Right now you're basically forced into this Harmony or combo because the other capstone doesn't do anything.
You want to hear my idea for a third cap?
let's hear it.
Go.
Okay, it's actually sick. You get +1 Arcane Charge, and that will make it so Nether Tempest and Arcane Blaspheming it scales quicker than Arcane Barrage, so that will kind of outweigh that one. And then it'll also make mana management more of the thing, and I think that could be cool. And it would be more of like a original, I guess, normal Arcane playstyle instead of the Barrage build, which seems to
Yeah.
be the only thing.
Yeah, the biggest issue with the Arcane tree right now is that there's no real other option other than Curing Arcane. It's pretty much Curing Arcane or bust right now. So yeah, they definitely need something that makes Arcane Blast worth pressing again as like our main ability.
Yeah, I would love that. How does your mana play right now?
It's like not an issue at all, especially
Yeah.
with Arcane Surge becoming a thing. You're gonna have 0 mana issues with the playstyle just because you're pressing Barrage rotationally.
yeah, that's
Also,
I feel-
gotta say, Arcane Surge is just like such a cool idea, and I'm really happy we got this. Honestly, super hype.
Okay, yeah, no, Arcane Surge is dope. I think that like this is what they were trying to accomplish in BFA when they put CDs everyone's CD on the GCD, is they were like, we want you to feel like it's on the GCD, but it makes sense because it blasts. Like imagine you hit Combustion, but like it's on the global, but it just shoots like an actual fucking like giant meteor at your target and it hits them for
Big
like,
ball talk.
yeah, it hits them with big ball, right? Like that's the idea of what Arcane Surge is. This is what they want. This is if they were to remake the game right now, they would make everyone's class ability be on the GCD, but they would make it fucking own like Arcane Surge. That's like clearly what they want. I think a mistake with Arcane is that Arcane historically is the Mage mana spec. It's the spec where mana is like deeply involved in what you're doing. Multiple times throughout the game, it's been like a very important part of Arcane. The fact that Fire and Frost both completely ignore it. I mean, if you're gonna bring back something from the past, give them just like Fired Up said, give them a capstone where your mana is relevant. I think that'd be fun as hell. Be totally different.
It makes sense too, because like a lot of other classes have something that's like you get 1 more chi, you get 1 more combo point, you just get 1 more Arcane Charge, and it adds a lot.
So I do need to mention something. One of the sad side effects of making Touch of the Magi instant cast is unfortunately the increased duration is basically counteracted by the fact that you're going to have to wait a global cooldown after you cast it. So that's really
It's
not
off
great.
the global Touch of the Magi right now.
Oh, it is? Okay, cool.
Yeah.
It has some weird interaction, like you cannot press it while your global cooldown is active, but it doesn't trigger it. Also, I just want to mention, like, if you look at the second tier in Arcane, there's literally no talent which has 2 points. All of them are single point talents. That's really nice. I really like that. Like, between the 8 required and 20 required, all of them are just single
every
points.
single one.
That's
Yeah,
Wait, is there a
wish
single
that's
3-point node
more
on this whole
fire.
tree? Dude, I think that's a new thing. I'm not positive about this, but I'm pretty sure that all 3-point nodes on any class or spec are bad. I don't know if that's true. I think that's true, but
I'm convinced that's true. Yeah.
yeah, I would need to see. I'd need to see like a little more to know if that's true or not. So like it's always a dub if you don't have a 3-point node on your class. I think this looks fine because I think Arcane the way it plays right now is actually really cool. And I think
Yeah,
it's
I
like,
also really
Good.
love that you have like the option for execute, right, with bombardment, or you can go like the Arcane Echo where you're like spamming missiles after you touch the Magi. I like this a lot that there's that option there.
yeah, it
it's-
seems
it's-
like Arcane is not too far off. They just need to give you orb for free up here and bake something in where you don't have to think about it.
I like how like in the raid single target build, to get the movement stuff, you do lose damage, but which makes sense. Like you should have to lose damage probably for the mobility, but the talents are like kind of whatever that you lose. It's very minor. So that's, I feel like they did a good job with like tuning that, where to get some foresight and slipstream, all you really lose is like arcane tempo and arcane familiar on the top left, which won't be too great for a raid situation anyway.
Oh yeah, also the way Arcane Familiar works right now is like if you target a mob, even if you don't do anything, your Familiar can just like pull it randomly. So that's also really fun about that talent.
Yeah, I just wanted to mention what Preheat said about the AoE talents being in like random places. And also like some of the connections just don't make sense. Like you have to take a useless single target talent if you want to get the AoE option. So maybe they could shuffle some of these around. But yeah, as we said, like the tree is very close to being good.
I also, yeah, I think it's very close to being good as well. I also think that, dude, they have Arcane and just the Mage class in general just has such funky lines like connecting these abilities. Like, look at this thing. Look at this like weird slant. Like how is it? I think it's so weird that like Frost has issues connecting across the tree. Yeah. The general and the
Fire
Frost tree
Arcane are okay.
have like major connection issues, and then like the Arcane one is just like they drew a line between like every ability down here.
Yeah, there are some like nonsensical lines as well. Like if you take a look at Evocation and Nether Tempest and Presence of Mind, you cannot take Nether Tempest without taking Presence of Mind. So what's the connection between Nether Tempest and Evocation doing? It's literally useless.
Oh yeah, you're right.
By the way, Pri, you mentioned earlier the arcane execute talent supposed to be 35%. Do you know what the second point is supposed to be?
So I don't remember exactly what it is, but it's either 50% or 100%. I don't remember which one. But if it's like 50%, that should bring Arcane Harmony like back up to basically where it is right now, right? Because it's 144% right now. If it's 100% and then this one's 50%, then during the execute it would be roughly as strong. I honestly though I'd have to look up like really old spell data on Wowhead to figure it out because all their new stuff is wrong on the tooltip.
Dude, the more I looked at these, I think all 3 spec trees are like very close from being like pretty good. Like more than most classes on their first iteration. It's just mainly a pathing and like a few big mistakes. The class tree needs Jesus bad. The class tree has like so many issues.
It's the worst thing ever, but everything else is pretty good, pretty close to good.
Yeah,
Well, I think Frost needs a bit more work than.
Yeah,
than
I agree.
Fire and Arcane.
I think Arcane and Fire are like very close. Frost needs major work, and the general class tree, I'm actually sure that it is the worst general class tree that they released, including like some of the very first ones before they got any feedback. I hope to see what it looks like next week. I don't know. Does anyone know? So sometimes the devs are like pretty open and they communicate, and then some of them are like, really really good, but they don't even post their own stuff. Like the DK dev, I actually had someone tell me internally. They were like, yeah, that guy's like insane, but he like never talks to anyone, and he has no want to like speak publicly ever or like anything like that. He's just like a silent assassin basically. And then there's some that like openly communicate a lot. Do you guys know who's doing the Mage one? Do any of you know?
I don't think they're an Arcane Mage. I can say that, but I don't know. Well, the Mana Gem thing is like a dead giveaway. I mean, why is Conjure Mana Gem there on the 20 row? I mean, we're ignoring it, right? Because we aren't taking this build, but like it makes no sense.
Dude, that was
I'm
brutal.
sorry. I know, but this is just like that talent like literally makes no sense. It'd be one thing if it was just utility versus damage, but the fact that evocation is also there, what's going on?
I will say the one thing it does let you do is press Arcane Blast after your Arcane Surge, but you can press other things like you can press Meteor or Arcane Barrage after you surge immediately.
I think the other two, honestly, though, like obviously we've talked about how Frost has like some glaring issues. There's, I haven't seen anything where it's like as egregious though as the Mana Gem. That's just why I pointed out specifically.
Yeah, I mean that's not it's one ability. You know, just bounce it real quick. Frost one seems like it's, I don't know. Do you really think it's that far off? I really feel like they just munch some of this shit down here, combine it, give you it, and then you're actually able to think about this other stuff. And then I feel it, and if you combine that with like snowstorm, which I think you would take in most Frost Mage situations, you're like, I feel like your play style is like pretty close to what it is now.
Well, the thing is, they need to consolidate a lot of those multi-point talents, and if you don't replace or if you don't create new like 1 or 2 point talents to fill those missing points, the tree is gonna feel pretty hollow. So I think there also needs to be some work, like come up with some new talents, which I don't think you really need to do for Fire or Arcane. Maybe for Fire for Arcane you need a new capstone probably. For Fire, I think there's like 1 or 2 new talents, but I think for Frost you will have to come up with like a lot more talents if you want to fill in those consolidated 3-pointers.
Like I'm just going down and filling out the single target one you had me do earlier. Like think about this, right? Like, so we talked about how 3.0s are bad, right? They make this a 2 point into a 3 point, right? I'm just going to take out Bone Chilling and just imagine I still have Bone Chilling selected. You can then just add the Flurry 2 charges in pure single. And then if they munch the stuff at the bottom, you have the option to, while still having Hailstones and all of this, you get everything you want down here with still 2 more points remaining, as well as having the Flurry and Bone Chilling. By just making those 2 changes can allow you to go in a lot of different directions.
Yeah,
Right?
it's
you can
definitely
grab
gonna
Comet
be...
Storm. Yeah, you can grab a lot of stuff. I think it's actually pretty
It's
good.
definitely going to be a lot better than it is right now, but I still feel like it probably needs like a few new talents to fill in the blank spaces.
Yeah.
Maybe I'm just overthinking it.
Norrinir, I got a question. So with Icy Propulsion, does that activate from Icicles?
It does.
So like with Glacial Spike, I feel like there's something missing there if you ever want to
Yeah,
go
there's
like PV.
Really big
Icy Propulsion.
I think it's just that Glacial Spike needs to contribute to Icy Propulsion for as many icicles that it is consuming, right?
Yeah, that would solve it.
It would almost solve it, not including the cast time. But I mean, that's just like a push, you know, that's whatever.
Yeah, I mean, if you include the 5 icicles, then you have the 1 extra hit for the Glacial Spike itself, which is okay. Like for Frostbolt, if you want to get the 1 cooldown reduction for Frostbolt, you also have to cast for 2 seconds, so it's not this big of a deal.
Someone
But
said...
Icy Propulsion definitely needs to be changed in some way, at least like make it active outside of ice events and nerf the cooldown reduction a bit. Because it's just so bad if you want to not... Like, Frost doesn't really have any options for the non-uptime spec. Like, the only way you play Frost with these, as the talents are set up right now, is you have to pick Thermal Void, and you have to just spam all your ice lances. And, they're like...
Are you ever going to take Snap Freeze ever?
It's a hard one, I think.
We kind of didn't talk
it has
about
potential.
I could see it like if you're trying to go like a Glacial Spike way and not get all the Icy Vein stuff and just get Icy Propulsion and get like all the other active abilities, but it just synergizes so badly with the Frostbolt talent that Norrinir was talking about earlier.
Yeah, so if Icy Propulsion was changed to work outside of Icy Veins, so you could actually get decent benefits from the cooldown reduction even as Glacial Spike, I think you might want to pick the talent as Glacial Spike. So I think it has potential. It's just that right now there are like no good setups where you have a free point to spend in it.
Dude, I was way more doomer about the Mage spec trees until I talked to you guys today, I think. I really think they're like, a few of them are like 2 or 3 changes away, and the Frost one just has like a few more than that. But yeah, dude, I would honestly want to just see almost entirely new capstones.
Yeah.
For Mage, like, and like change down here near the bottom, and these nodes just the whole tree just feels so bad. Like I was actually in pain doing it, thinking about how other classes are doing this versus how mages are. Yeah, they need to. I would actually even hold off on doing the specs if I'm the mage dev. I would just like take a few notes on the spec things. It's not too much work anyway. Just actually hard think about the mage general tree. I think that's probably something a lot of people could agree on. It's so bad. All right, okay, that's it. Thanks for this. Is much more doomer than any of my other conversations, but it's also definitely the worst general tree we've seen so far. And Mage is a very popular class. So thanks guys for for coming on. As I've done with the other classes, and this is probably gonna get more busy as time goes on because there's just more specs getting worked on every week. But yeah, whenever they make changes, we'll probably just call up for a much shorter amount of time. Probably around, and it'll start even earlier than it did today. Probably like 15, 30 minutes, and just go over the changes and talk about how it affects Mage and stuff like that. It'll be in probably a week or two.
Yeah, I'd say obviously got a little heated there, but like positive feedback is always the best way to try and get change whenever it comes to this stuff. So don't be like me.
No, it's good. Yeah, also, I think if you guys are really wanting to binge Mage content, I saw Preheat tweeted out a video. You got like all the like Mage theorycrafter dudes.
It's a long one, but if you want the summary, at the very end, there's timestamps for like the recaps. We had kind of like a roster of people that just kind of like shuffled in and out, but
oh, you got Toe Grinder, dude. People were telling me to get Toe Grinder on the whole week, and every single time I'm just like, okay, tell me about him. Like, is he good in conversation? And they were just like, he grinds toes. They didn't.
Oh,
even tell
he
me.
has a little dog picture.
Yeah, I love his little dog picture. The roster is stacked on this one. It was really good talk. But yeah, thanks for having me on here, and definitely go follow, all the Mage Theory crafters and folks, and be listening to their stuff and keep that positive feedback going.
Yep, amen.
Yep,
And thanks for coming
us.
on. Yeah, thanks for coming on, Norrinir. I've never spoken with you before. That was a good time. Thanks for coming on. And then Fired Up, I'm glad you woke up today in time for this, man. That was good. Did you actually like seeing that we pushed it back an hour? Was that like a...
Yeah, that was good.
That's good. Yeah. All right. See you guys.
All right, thanks.
Yeah, see you.
Yeah. Yeah.